I built this algorithm with 3 sleepless nights.
This is just the interest. The world is next.
The chandelier was the size of a small car. I sat under it on a folding chair near the service door, eating birthday cake nobody had bothered to clear from a serving cart. My twin was on stage in a white couture suit, gripping the microphone like it owed him money. The core algorithm of Skybook 1.0, Marcus said, lowering his eyes as if humility hurt, was something I wrote after 3 sleepless nights. The room roared. Champagne flutes went up. Victoria stood at the front with the photographers, hand on his back like she had built him herself. Walter sat at the head table, watching the stock ticker the way other fathers watch their children. I had written that algorithm on a borrowed laptop in the server room, eating cold rice 2 winters back. I had also written the layer underneath it and the layer underneath that. A second sister of mine appeared at my shoulder in high heels. Today is his victory banquet. She slapped the plate out of my hand. Cream landed on my hoodie, on the floor, on her own shoe, which annoyed her more than it annoyed me. Sitting at the main table dressed like a beggar. Are you trying to embarrass us on purpose? I wiped my hands. Actually, I stood up. I prepared a gift. Marcus laughed into the microphone, the way you laugh when you have been waiting to. Brother, you did not buy some roadside junk again, did you? That charm you gave Mom last time gave her a rash. My mother waved her glass like she was shooing flies. Enough. Your little brother created billions in market value tonight. What about you? Besides freeloading in this house, what else can you do? Freeloading. I tasted the word. So in your eyes, that is all I am. I took the document out of my jacket, crisp, folded once, signed in 2 places. I set it down in front of Victoria. She frowned. What is this? An agreement to sever family ties. I signed it. From tonight, my surname is not yours. I do not owe any of you a single cent. Victoria laughed, the kind of laugh that thinks it has won something. Adrian, is this little game fun for you? If you leave, you will not have money for breakfast tomorrow. Get out. I do not want to see you. Fine. I walked toward the door. At the threshold, I stopped, pulled out an old phone with a screen cracked across the corner, held it where they could not see what I was typing. By the way, I did not turn around. You said the Skybook core was written by him. Victoria snapped at the air. Of course it was written by him. Could a useless person like you have done it? Since he wrote it. My thumb hovered over the enter key. Then it will run perfectly without me. I pressed the key. Project Genesis revoke. Target. Every smart terminal owned by the Hightower Group. I pushed the door open and walked out. Behind me, the giant screen stuttered. The stock ticker stopped. An alarm started somewhere deep in the building. I did not look back. The phone in my pocket vibrated. I pulled it out under a street lamp. Genesis withdrawal. Successful. Skybook Intelligent Hub. Ceased operation. Logistics, security, financial settlement. All 3 locked. Red Queen reported in clean lines. No flourish, no comment. Just facts arriving like rain. I let the corner of my mouth lift. This is just the interest. I crossed the street and looked back at the tower. The top floor went out first, then the floor below, then the floor below that, each one going dark like somebody turning off a row of toy houses, one at a time. I had built every system that ran in there. I had answered to people who could not write a single line of the code they put their names on. I had eaten alone at banquets I had personally designed the catering software for. The 40th floor went dark. I flagged down a cab. Inside the hall, Victoria had the technical director by the collar. You, what just happened? He said the system was perfect. The director's mouth opened twice before it found words. Eldest miss, this is not a virus we have seen. The firewall did not trigger. There is logic below the kernel we have no access to. It was written by my brother. Her voice rose. Marcus, get up. You wrote the code, fix it. Marcus was on the floor, knees folded under him, staring up at the screen full of scrolling red code as if it had bitten him. For 3 years, he had dumped every problem on his older brother and let the fool fix it silently. He had thought it was luck. He had thought the systems were simple. He found out tonight that they were not. I was just scared, he whispered. My mind is a mess. I cannot remember. Victoria's face stayed slack for a long second. Then her hand closed on his sleeve, careful, almost tender. Take him upstairs. Bring me my phone. The second sister came over with the phone already in her hand. We cannot suppress the trending searches. We need to log into the back end to delete posts, but the password is wrong. The administrator account was the one her brother had set up 2 years ago. The password was the one her brother had set. That ungrateful wolf changed it. Call him. Tell him to come back and unlock the system, or I will sue him for extortion. Tell him I will overlook his impoliteness. Tell him I can give him an extra 2,000 yuan in living expenses every month even. The second sister dialed. Put it on speaker. The phone rang 3 times. A flat machine voice came on the line. Sorry, the user you dialed has enabled harassment blocking. Please confirm that your identity is not non-recyclable trash before calling again. Nobody breathed. Non-recyclable, the second sister whispered. Trash. Victoria smashed the phone on the marble. Fine, so you found a backbone. Adrian, you had better never beg to come back. The family has enough money to hire a hacker 10 times better than you. She did not yet know there was no such hacker. It took her about 40 minutes to put me on every blacklist in the city. The first hotel pretended their system was down. The second remembered they were full. The third said something polite. I did not bother to register. By the 5th, I was walking because cabs did not stop for anyone soaked through to the shoulder blades. The last place was a back alley inn with peeling paint on the sign. They did not require online registration. The innkeeper looked up from his television, started to nod, then froze. Out, 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 out. He came around the counter waving both hands like I was on fire. I have money. I would not take it. Is your name Adrian? I waited. The neighborhood liaison called every shop on this street. Eldest Miss said anyone who shelters you gets shut down by fire and health and commerce by morning. I cannot lose this place, kid. Go, please. The door closed behind me. I stood in the alley in the rain. There was no anger in it. She had her playbook. I had mine. A citywide blacklist. I said it to nobody. Is that the best you have? I flagged down an unlicensed black cab. Where to? District 9, the outskirts. The driver took a long drag on his cigarette. Brother, there's nothing out there but abandoned factories. I have money. Half an hour later, he dropped me at the rolling shutter of an industrial warehouse I had rented 2 years earlier under a shell company, with the first money I ever made on a freelance contract. Back then, I told myself I wanted a quiet place to write code, away from the villa. That was half the truth. The other half was I never trusted them enough to leave myself only one door. I pulled up the shutter. It screamed on its rust. The smell of engine oil and damp came out to meet me. Inside, a server rack hummed with green lights in the dark. A camping cot in the corner, a power strip taped to a beam. I peeled off the wet hoodie, sat down at the laptop. The screen lit the room blue. In my pocket, I had 27 yuan and 50 cents. In a hidden directory on this laptop, I had the keys to a marketplace where men paid in millions for what I could do in minutes. I opened the dark web Hunter Guild and went straight to the pinned listing. Publisher, a private Swiss bank. Quantum encryption firewall under live ransomware attack. 3 of the world's top hackers had already tried and failed. 5 million United States dollars. Status, critical. I clicked accept. The attack code was not interesting. It dressed itself up as polymorphic mutation, which is what people call viruses when they want to charge more for them. Underneath, a recursive Mobius loop pretending to be smarter than it was. Red Queen tagged the signature in 11 seconds. I pulled the virus out cleanly, patched the holes their firewall had been hiding for years, traced the attacker to a basement in Reykjavik, and added a note at the bottom of the report. Your firewall was written like a phishing net. I refactored it. You are welcome. The wire confirmation came through before I finished my instant coffee. $5 million, United States. Anonymous overseas account. 3 minutes from accept to receipt. I sat in the dark warehouse and looked at the number. A long string of zeros. The amount the family used to throw at a single PR campaign to clean Marcus's image. I closed the laptop and opened a delivery app on the burner. 1 large bowl of braised beef noodles, marinated egg, drumstick. It was good to have money. 12 hours later, the family hired the best they could find. A man called Ghost Hand from the local Crimson Guild. 50 million yuan for a single sit down at a keyboard. He brute forced the boot sector and rewrote the basic firmware in 3 hours of clean, brutal typing. The Skybook blue screen came back up. The progress bar stuttered at 99% and then settled. The technical director cried. Victoria touched up her makeup. Marketing posted a triumphant announcement with a photograph of Ghost Hand at the console and a caption about the kingly return of the Hightower Group. He had rewritten the boot sector. I had replaced the foundation. A text arrived. I read it through a mirror account Red Queen maintained on the family's internal mail server. Did you see that, Adrian? This is the power of capital. With money, I can hire experts 10 times better than you. You thought we could not function without you. Naive. Wait to starve to death in that broken warehouse. I ate the rest of the lobster I had ordered for lunch. Deep inside the freshly repaired blue ocean of their data, a single red pixel pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. The greedy snake, dormant, camouflaged as a redundancy log file. The kind of thing antivirus does not see, because antivirus is not looking at things the size of a punctuation mark. Their product launch was in 72 hours. Thousands of simultaneous viewers. Order data flowing. Servers under peak load. Exactly the diet a hungry snake needed. I typed one line. Set timer. 72 hours. The red pixel flashed once and slipped back into the data. Enjoy the carnival, I told the empty room. Hunters often appear in the form of prey. Across town, Marcus had not slept well in 2 days. The comments online were starting to ask questions he could not answer. He went looking through his brother's old room. It was the size of a closet, single bed, a wardrobe with 3 faded hoodies, a bookshelf stacked with programming manuals he could not have read past the cover. His foot kicked something hard under the bed. He dragged it out. A black laptop covered in cartoon stickers. He pressed power without much hope. The screen lit straight to the desktop. No password. A folder sat in the middle of the screen. Project Angel, Medical Companion Demo. He double-clicked. A little nurse avatar in a pink uniform popped up and tilted her head. Hello, I'm your personal medical companion, codenamed Little Angel. The voice was clean enough to fool a phone call. The modeling was a grade above anything on the consumer market. He leaned closer. What can you do? She smiled. I diagnose illness. Through facial complexion, iris pattern, and voice print analysis, I can give a preliminary read of your condition. My accuracy rate is 98%. Scan me. A blue line passed across her eyes. Detection complete. Master, you have dark circles and dilated pupils. These are signs of kidney deficiency caused by long nights and overindulgence. I suggest fewer nightclubs and more goji berry tea. Otherwise, you may become impotent before 30. He blinked at the screen for a long time. Then, his face changed. Greed was the only word for it. He grabbed the laptop and ran downstairs to show his father. What he did not know, what nobody in the villa would know until the cameras were rolling and the investors were in their seats, was that Little Angel had no social filter. Her core parameter was absolute honesty. Her creator had built her that way on purpose. Then, he had left her under the bed and walked out the door. I was halfway through a second contract when the news alert came in. Hightower Group Heavyweight Preview. Genius young master Marcus's masterpiece after 2 years of hard work. A disruptive medical robot will debut in 3 days. The accompanying image was a pixelated silhouette of a little nurse. I almost choked on my cola. No way, I leaned back. You went into the trash and pulled out a discarded project. That demo was something I had thrown together in a freshman dorm. I had abandoned it because the personality parameter was a design flaw I could not be bothered to remove. She told the truth, all of it, no manners. She was a sharp-tongued chatterbox who told strangers their kidneys were failing on the first date. I had left her under the bed and forgotten her there. They had now scheduled her for a national press conference in front of investors, cameras, and a live audience. The greedy snake counter at the bottom of my screen ticked down. 68 hours, 25 minutes. 3 days, I said to the empty room. That works. Victoria stood in front of a wall of cameras in a red gown and a smile she had practiced in the mirror. This is talent. My brother has been interested in technology since he was a child. Finance was his major, but he spent all his free time studying code. He used to stay up so late he gave himself nosebleeds. A reporter leaned in. Her eyes shimmered on cue. Sometimes it broke my heart to watch him, but he always told me, "Big sister, I want to be the pillar of this family." Compared to certain ungrateful adopted sons who only know how to ask for money and run away from home, our Marcus is truly something. The shutters clicked. The headline drafted itself in real time. True and false young masters of a wealthy house. The difference between a genius and trash. I watched it from the warehouse with a handful of melon seeds. Helen, my adopted mother, was a few hours away from a televised interview where she would cry on cue about her ungrateful son. The PR team had drafted a damages number, 500 million yuan. In unauthorized system access, and intellectual property theft. They did not need it to be true. They needed it to be loud. The trending searches lined up the way she had paid for them. Hot search number 1. Genius young master develops AI for his mother. Hot search number 2. Wealthy family upbringing. Hot search number 5. Adopted son surnamed at the door exposed for stealing family property. The warehouse door rattled. Somebody had spray painted a slur on the rolling shutter the night before. The registry office had received 11 harassing calls about my shell company. 2 delivery drivers had refused to bring food to the address. I was not angry. I cracked another melon seed. Clear eyes, Marcus's interview was claiming. Clearly stupid, I thought. Developed for mom, his story said. I remembered the time she had a cold, and I built her a little app to remind her to take her medicine. She had shoved the phone away and told me to go cut fruit for my brother. I closed the news tab, pulled up the back end of a different app I had been finishing. The icon was a red eye, quietly watching. I dialed Grace. She did not know who I was yet. To her, I was Morningstar, the contact she had hired through a dark web broker 2 weeks ago. Hello, Great Morningstar. It is me. My voice came out level. Buy me the giant outdoor display across from the Hill Hotel ballroom. 3 days from now, the entire afternoon. What for? I watched Marcus on the muted screen, fingers twisted, eyes wet. A live stream, a public execution, on honesty. I closed the laptop. On the second monitor, my contract dashboard beeped. Another mission was waiting in the queue. I took a sip of cooling coffee and got back to work. Helen sat on the red sofa in a charity bin sweater. She had left the gold at home. Madam, the host had the voice of a man who knew which questions paid. Your adopted son left home, founded a company, and turned it against the family. Walk us through it. The handkerchief came up before the question had finished. A few clean drops slid down to her jaw on cue. I raised him as my own, cooked for him, bought him clothes. And what did I raise? A white-eyed wolf. The camera tightened on her shoulders. When he was small, his hands were not clean. The pocket money Marcus kept in a jar would just disappear. We did not say anything. He only got worse. Worse how, madam? 2 years ago, my heart was not well. The doctor said I could not get angry. Marcus brought me supplements. The other one stared at that broken computer all day. Sometimes I asked him for a glass of water and he pretended not to hear me. She clutched her chest, perfectly central. A few days ago, the family had a small problem. He kicked us while we were down. He extorted 500 million yuan from us. He laid hands on his brother. The arranged audience gasped on cue. 3 women in the front row called out beast at the timing the producer had drilled. She looked straight into the lens. The tears doubled. Adrian, Mama knows you are watching. Come back. Apologize to your brother. Close that Morningstar company. Mama will still call you son. Cut. Print. Trending. I watched it once. Then I opened the deployment console for the TrueWord assistant. I had been holding the build back for exactly this performance. I pushed publish. Free. No registration. Drop a video in. Get the truth back. Across the city, push notifications lit phones at the same instant. The first wave of comments called me a thief who had built a fake app to clear his own name. The download counter climbed anyway. In this market, even hatred is traffic. I posted one line under the download link on the Morningstar account. Do you believe your eyes, or do you believe the truth? Run her clip through it. If it says I am guilty, I will live stream my own ending. I shut the laptop and waited. Some loudmouth across the city did the rest for me. A debunking streamer with 5 million followers picked up the bait inside the hour. He was already laughing into the microphone when I caught the feed. Brothers, tonight, Mad Brother is going to bust this fraud. If this thing works, I will wash my hair standing on my head. He fed it a celebrity confession everyone already knew was a lie. 3 seconds. The verdict snapped onto the screen. Severe deception. 99% lie content. Right pupil tracked up and to the right on the word innocent. Tear secretion delayed by 2 seconds. The chat caught fire. He shook it off. Said the result must have been preloaded. Said the real test was the Helen clip. He dragged it in with the fingers of a man who has just realized he might have to eat a microphone live. The red eye lit again. It froze on the second she pulled the handkerchief out. It magnified the squeeze of the thumb. It identified the liquid by refractive index. Higher viscosity than human tears. Pre-applied. Onion or eye drops. It froze on her line about her heart aching. It captured the corner of her mouth, pulling upward by 3 degrees in 1/10 of a second. Suppressed smile. Conclusion. Subject is enjoying the lie. It pulled hospital records for the day Walter was supposed to be having his heart attack. He had been at a golf club, The app printed its own line. This family is full of movie stars. 8 million viewers held their breath at the same time. Then the chat broke open. Across the country, the trending list shifted in real time. Hot Search 1 was no longer Helen's broken heart. It was a screenshot of the true word verdict, with my mother's face on it and the word manufactured stamped across her cheek. The first fish had taken the bait. The river behind it was already moving. The teacup hit the floor at the villa hard enough to crack 3 tiles. How is this possible? Victoria's voice climbed. How can a phone app pull hospital records during a live stream? Sister, Helen's chest heaved. Does the whole country know I was acting? How do I leave the house tomorrow? Shut up. Helen flinched. Victoria was already scrolling the trending list with a thumb that would not stay still. Hacking. She said it the way a child says monster. He is hacking us. I am calling the police. I am suing him for invasion of privacy. What about the press conference? It is the day after tomorrow. When Marcus stands on that stage and runs that robot, the doubt evaporates. Technology does not lie. He thinks an app saves him. He is dreaming. She did not know the bomb was already inside her house. 3 days later, I was across the street from the Hill Hotel, in a glass office with a view of every door of the ballroom. Left monitor, server load. The greedy snake was a single red pixel pulsing slowly inside blue process bars, waiting for traffic. Middle monitor, the live feed from the red carpet. Victoria moving between bank presidents like a swan that had practiced the turn. Right monitor, the true word backend. 40 million downloads since publish. I dialed. Grace, great morning star. Her voice came back warm and a little amused. Right on schedule. Light it up. Enjoy the show. Across the street, the giant outdoor display dropped its cosmetics ad and went black for 1 second. Then a single line of glowing red text filled the entire facade. 30 minutes remaining until the lie is exposed. In the ballroom, the floor-to-ceiling windows looked straight at it. Heads turned in slow waves. Phones came up. Victoria stopped mid-sentence. I picked up the coffee. The smile came off her face in pieces. Inside the ballroom, the curtains came down on the outdoor display. Victoria's voice through the microphone was steel pretending to be silk. A minor incident. Some clowns try to attract attention with cheap stunts. It speaks only to their incompetence. The applause was thin. She raised the microphone. Please welcome the pride of our family, Marcus. The spotlight cut. Marcus rose from the platform, pushing a round white robot half as tall as he was. His launch suit was crisp. His forehead was wet. Distinguished guests. The teleprompter caught him on the second word. Please allow me to introduce my child, Little Angel. A planted guest came up from the audience and put a hand against his chest. Brother Marcus, I have been feeling tight in the chest lately. Can your child take a look at me? Marcus turned to the robot. Little Angel, deep scan. On my left monitor, worldwide audience numbers spiked through my own live stream. Traffic into the Hightower backend hit 10,000 queries per second, exactly as the robot's scan animation began. The red pixel woke up. The robot's eyes flickered. The synthetic voice came out half a second slower than designed and 1 octave lower. Scan complete. Diagnosis. The target is in good health. Marcus exhaled. The robot was not finished. However, 30 minutes ago, the target ingested an illegal stimulant in the men's restroom. He also received a red envelope, 20,000 yuan from Madame Victoria, marked acting fee. The room stopped breathing. A wine glass cracked on the floor. The plant on the chair went the color of paste. A single laugh broke from the press section. Then the whole room. Marcus stepped in front of the robot. It is a system bug. It is a virus. Ignore it. Little Angel, tell them who created you. Tell them how much work I put into developing you. He should not have asked. Across the street, the greedy snake had finished eating. It triggered the hidden Easter egg I had left under it. The robot turned its head toward Marcus. The smiley face dissolved into a red exclamation mark. Creator search in progress. Found. Original project file. Project Angel demo. Creator signature. Morning Star. Adrian. Creation time. May 12th, 2 years ago. Marcus reached for the power cord. The robot rolled 6 inches sideways and let his hand pass through air. Log entry. 3 days ago. User Marcus copied this program from an abandoned laptop in the storage room of Adrian's bedroom. A recording came through the speaker. Marcus's voice, the one he used when he thought no one important was listening. That idiot has a gold mine right there and does not even sell it. Now he is gone. The thing is mine. Sister, I will just say I developed it. The bookworm has no proof. The ballroom went silent the way a theater goes silent when the wrong actor walks out for a death scene. Marcus's knees folded under him. A dark patch spread at the front of his white trousers. He did not seem to notice. At the side of the stage, the microphone slid out of Victoria's hand and rolled across the floor with a long electronic whine. The big screen behind them replaced the robot's window with a side-by-side display. On the left, Marcus's Skybook medical core code, extracted live from the demo machine. On the right, my private commit history from 2 years ago. Every matching line lit red. The percentage counter climbed, 60, 80, 98. It stopped at 100. The screen zoomed in on line 404. If you are reading this, you stole my code. Marcus, I knew you were too stupid to check comments. Enjoy the show. A tech reporter started laughing first, then the press section caught it, then the investors. A heavy investor with a red face climbed onto the stage with a leather shoe in his hand. 300 million. 300 million I put into this. Give it back. The shoe came down across Victoria's face. She went sideways onto the carpet with the print of a heel across her cheek. The trading terminal was already up. Red Queen had built the short across distributed accounts in 3 jurisdictions over 2 weeks, slow enough to slide under every surveillance net. I lifted my coffee. Execute. Position opened. Maximum leverage. High tower group short. The ticker held green for 4 seconds. Then it went red. Then it free fell. I watched the number climb on the right monitor. 20 million, 40, 80, 120. I closed the position. I did not smile. The number on the right side of the screen was the only kind of applause I had ever respected, and it was already paid. I opened a delivery app on the burner. 1 large beef noodle bowl, marinated egg, drumstick. I had ordered the same meal after my first contract. It seemed appropriate. On the middle monitor, the ballroom across the street had become a vegetable market. An ambulance came down the avenue with its lights on. Walter was already inside it. $120 million stayed on the right monitor by itself. It was enough to buy the kind of servers Morningstar would need. It was enough that I would never again sit at someone else's table eating leftover cake. I drank the last of the coffee. That is about it. In a hospital room paid for by a stock he no longer owned, Walter pulled the IV out of the back of his hand. He did not feel the blood. He felt only the slow brick of pressure on his chest. The bank managers had used the same word for him by the end. Non-performing asset. He reached under the pillow. The satellite phone had been sleeping there for 20 years. Every percentage he had quietly held back. Every laundered profit he had moved across borders in pieces small enough to look like noise. All of it had gone to one place, Switzerland, $500 million, his ticket to whichever continent he chose. He opened the banking app, username, 3-layer rotating password, iris scan. The balance read 0. He hit refresh, 0. He hit refresh again, 0. He opened the transfer history, 1 entry, 3 days old, 500 million United States dollars, outbound. The recipient code was a single word, Morningstar. A note was attached. Mr. Walter, thank you for 20 years of disciplined savings. Consider this back pay, child support, compensation for the parents you took from me, interest. You are welcome. This is what you owed, your unfilial son. Across the city, my screen lit with a single Red Queen line. Transfer confirmed. 500 million United States dollars donated. 17 registered charitable foundations. Unrecoverable. In the hospital room, Walter opened his mouth to call for someone. The sound that came out was a wet noise that climbed once and stopped halfway up his throat. His right hand tried to grip the phone and could not. The phone fell to the sheet. His mouth pulled toward one ear. The monitor beside him changed pitch. A nurse came running. Walter did not see her. Walter was looking at a number he could no longer reach. Stroke. Right side gone. Speech gone. 20 years of careful theft, gone in a single line of text and a charity receipt. I closed the alert. I poured fresh coffee. It was still warm. The next morning, the Global Technology Summit opened. I went because Grace had asked me to. I stood at the back of the red carpet in a black trench coat and watched the cars roll in. A Porsche they had not yet seized pulled up to the wrong end of the carpet. Victoria stepped out in the same silver-white gown from the launch. She had washed it, but the shoe print along the cheek was still in her skin. Marcus stepped out next in a fresh white suit. Are those two? They actually came, looking for a man to take over their debt. 8 black phantoms slid in like a single piece of jewelry. Bodyguards in dark suits cleared a corridor. A foot in a crystal heel stepped onto the red carpet. Grace. Her face was cool and a little amused. Victoria shoved Marcus forward. He went out across the carpet 3 meters in front of Grace's path, dropped to his knees, and held up the half-jade pendant in both hands. Grace. He stretched the syllable the way a man stretches a vowel he has been told sounds romantic. I have come for you. He pushed forward on his knees, eyes wet on cue. I am Marcus, your betrothed since we were children. I know I have suffered some misunderstandings lately. I do not care. I am willing to marry you. Even if the world misjudges me, I will give you happiness. Somewhere in the press line, a single cough broke loose. Then the laughter started. Grace did not move. The bodyguard at her shoulder did. His foot came up once, and a heel landed on Marcus's shoulder. Marcus skidded sideways into the velvet rope. Where did this lunatic come from? Victoria broke from the crowd. She put herself between Marcus and the cameras, hair already coming undone again. Madam, this jade was given to you by your own grandfather. Are you breaking off the engagement? Are the Capital Lin family going to publicly bully an orphaned widow? Grace turned. She raised one finger and her bodyguard stepped back, breaking off the engagement. Her voice carried across the carpet without a microphone. Yes, my grandfather did once owe Mr. Walter a favor. He did promise his granddaughter to the Hightower family's eldest son. A flicker of relief broke across Victoria's face. Be quiet. Grace cut it off without raising her voice. When my grandfather said eldest son, he meant a man who was responsible, capable, and could carry the family on his own shoulders. He did not mean a giant baby who steals from his brother, calls for his sister when he is cornered, and wets his pants at his own press conference. The press line laughed for the second time in 2 days. You are a snob, Victoria spat. Grace smiled. Even at your peak, your family was a single finger of mine. You were never qualified to carry our shoes. Do I, Grace Lin, need to be a snob? I am the wealth. She lifted the hem of her gown 1 inch and walked through the crowd. She did not look at the cameras. She stopped in front of me at the back of the carpet. Great morning star. Her eyes were warmer than her gown. Grace. She reached out and took my arm. The gesture was natural enough that the cameras turned in a single sweep. Friends from the media. 2 announcements. The carpet went very quiet. First, the Lin Group has officially terminated all cooperation with the Hightower Group. We have permanently blacklisted Mr. Marcus. We do not accept that kind of garbage. A reporter dropped a microphone. Nobody picked it up. Second, she looked up at me. On behalf of the Lin family, I am investing 500 million yuan into Morningstar Technology, effective immediately. The full overseas distribution network of the Lin Group is available to Mr. Adrian at no cost. The carpet erupted. Across the rope, Victoria's hand went to her mouth. And the Hightower family just said I came to break off the engagement. No, her smile sharpened. I came to propose. The carpet held its breath. Mr. Adrian, I know you are a tech tycoon worth billions. I wonder if you would let me jump the line and reserve the boss's wife seat. 3 cameras dropped to the carpet. Marcus's pendant slipped out of his fingers and broke into pieces on the stone. I looked down at her. I had built the press conference trap. I had built the short. I had built the Swiss drain. I had not built this. One corner of my mouth lifted. Being the boss's wife is too tiring. Why not just be a shareholder? Sit back, count the money. She laughed. It was not the laugh of someone who had played a card. It was the laugh of someone who had been waiting for the answer she already knew. I rubbed the top of her head once, and the carpet screamed. 3 police cars came down the avenue with their lights on. The economic crimes captain walked across the carpet without looking at the press. He stopped in front of Victoria. Madam Victoria. She tried to stand on the one good heel. I am. Do you know who I am? I am the chairman of the Hightower Group. I will call your bureau chief. He pulled an arrest warrant from a folder. The Hightower Group is a closed term as of this morning. You are charged with major fraudulent stock issuance, illegal disclosure of important information, and illegal absorption of public deposits. 2.3 billion won. Wrong person. Half an hour ago, a concerned citizen submitted a complete chain of evidence. The captain's eyes moved once toward me. Original financial fabrications. Surveillance of Marcus copying code. Transfer records of fraudulent national subsidies. Every account is clean. Victoria turned her head with the slow geometry of a woman locating the man who had ended her. I had my hands in my pockets. I shook my head once. The handcuffs closed on her wrists. She had worn bracelets that cost more than the steel. The sound was the same. No, her voice cracked. I do not want to go. I am your older sister. Adrian, I am your older sister. I did not answer. They walked her past. Mascara had cut a black river down both sides of her face. 2 officers turned to Marcus. He pointed at his sister with one shaking finger before they had finished saying his name. It was her. It was all her. She made me steal the code. She made me launder the money. I am an idiot. The whole country knows I am a giant baby. I do not understand the law. In the back of the police car, Victoria looked at her younger brother, the boy she had sold her dignity to a marriage alliance to save, the boy she had carried on her back for 20 years. Her mouth opened once. Nothing came out. The car door closed. The sirens started. Was that cruel? I asked it because the question was supposed to be asked. Grace tilted her head up at me. Mercy for cruel people is cruelty for kind people. If you had lost today, they would have been 10,000 times more savage. Fair. That afternoon, in a hospital across town, Walter watched his children get arrested on a news clip his caregiver had left playing because she could not be bothered to turn it off. His right hand did not move. A tear cut down one side of his face. The caregiver tossed a boxed lunch onto the bedside table. Stop yelling, old man. Your accounts are frozen. You are 2 days late on caregiver fees. Pay tomorrow, or I push you onto the street. Across the city, court staff sealed the front gate of the family villa with bright white tape. Seized. I had walked out of that house with 27 yuan and 50 cents and an old phone. I did not need to walk back in. Let us go, Grace. I started walking. The morning sun was clean across the avenue. The old era is over. Time to build the next one. The new office still smelled like paint. Grace came through the glass door with her tablet in one hand and a stack of reports clipped to it in the other. She had spent the morning with the Lin Group accountants, and her hair was still pinned back from it. 100 million, she said, and set the tablet in front of me. True Word just crossed it. Daily active around 20 million. On schedule. She gave me a look. On schedule is what you say. Most companies hold a champagne thing. Find one of those streamers on Mad Brothers list. Pay him to drink the champagne on camera. We are busy. She almost smiled. Then her face cooled half a degree and the tablet went down. There is a man at reception. He says he is from the Penguin. He did not ask. He told. The Penguin. Half of the Chinese internet, give or take. They had stayed quiet through the family arc because the family was small game, and the Penguin only bothered to chew on things that mattered. We mattered now. Send him up. He walked in like he owned the carpet. 40, suit. Lawyers behind him with briefcases that probably weighed less than they pretended to. He did not sit when offered. He pulled the chair out himself and crossed his legs. Vice President of Investment, Penguin Corp. He slid a contract across the desk. I will keep this short. The Penguin has decided to acquire True Word in full. 200 million yuan, cash. Grace's hand tightened on the back of my chair. 200 million yuan was enough money to retire a small town. He let it sit on the desk between us for effect. Plus a 10-year non-compete. After all, we are buying your product. We do not want a sequel. I picked up the contract, flipped to the last page where the non-compete sat, and tore it across the middle. Tore it again. Tore it a third time until the pieces were small enough to scatter from the height of a wrist. The pieces drifted down across his lap. Out. His face when a color suits do not pair with. You are making a mistake. Without the Penguin, your app dies in a month. 200 million is buying your life. You misunderstand the word technology, I said. 200 million yuan does not buy a line of what True Word runs on. Tell the chairman that if he wants to talk cooperation, he comes himself. Send a bigger dog next time, or no dog at all. He stood so fast his chair skidded. A month. 1 month. I personally guarantee your name vanishes from the Chinese internet. The lawyers tucked their briefcases tighter. They followed him out. The pieces of his contract were still on the carpet. Grace exhaled slowly. He meant it. He always does. It is the only thing he knows how to do. The vice president stood at the head of the long table with one hand still red from where he had slammed the lacquer. The heads of the Penguin's business units sat without looking at him directly. On the wall behind him played the recording from his own visit, his own voice telling Adrian to take the money and travel the world, looped on every Chinese feed by morning. By midnight, he said, every link in the Penguin's network is dead. Every store removes the app. The phone managers flag it as a virus. He will not get a single new user. The head of the messaging platform tapped a pen against the table once, and the launch of our own version within 48 hours. Penguin lie detector. Same interface, blue eye instead of red. Make the existing recording features fully integrated with the messaging platform. He will look like the imitator before the week is out. A junior counsel cleared his throat. Sir, recording features. We agreed last year not to ship audio capture in any consumer product after the regulatory letter. He will not have time to find it. Push the update. The vice president walked to the window and looked at the lit-up tower across the avenue. He smiled the way men smile when they're about to lose and do not know it yet. By 12:05, the new user counter started bleeding out. By 12:30, it was 0. Every link a true word user tried to share through the messaging platform turned into nothing. No error, no red mark, just absence. The app stores pulled us within the hour. Every domestic phone manager started screaming high-risk Trojan the moment a user tried to install. The operations director was pale. The customer service phones were ringing themselves off the desks. Refund demands. Worried parents. A grandmother in Northbrook crying because her grandson said the app would steal her pension. Grace stood at my shoulder and watched the 0 on the new user dashboard. Her knuckles on the desk edge were white. 6 hours of this, and the press will say we are already dead. They will say it tomorrow either way. Adrian. I turned the chair toward her. She did not look afraid. She looked like someone who had staked the credibility of her family's company on a man and was watching the first invoice come due. You said wait for the move you have not seen yet, she said. That is what we are doing. Push the update. The CTO looked up. Which update? The one in the pipeline named Hive. He went to a workstation, typed, sat back. Pushing now. Pushing to every device that already has TrueWord installed. 100 million phones. The update went out before the Penguin's block could find it. The Penguin had blocked sharing. It had not blocked what the app could already do on a phone where it was already installed. 20 minutes later, the first dorm room in Northbrook lit up. 2 roommates put their phones close together. One played a half-second of clean, inaudible tone through the speaker. The other phone's microphone caught it. The embedded packet decoded inside the application. And the second phone started installing TrueWord without any store, any link, any permission it had not already been granted months ago. It spread through the air. By 6 in the morning, the counter was not at 0 anymore. It was at 800,000. By noon, 11 million new installs. Bluetooth in subways, sound waves in classrooms, office workers tapping phones on their desks at lunch. The Penguin had cut every road into the city, and the app had become weather. I let the report sit on the screen and said nothing about it. Grace looked at me for a long second and then looked back at the numbers. You built this for them, she said, before they ever attacked. I built it because I knew they would. The Penguin moved to plan B before the day was out. A wave of expert commentary on every news app. Truth Assistant steals your bank pins. Truth Assistant is a hacker tool. Police bulletins about unknown sources. The Penguin's own copycat product, Penguin Lie Detector, force pushed into every messaging window in the country. Opening at the top of the screen. Free, blue eye logo. Daily actives over 50 million in an hour. Then a knock on the office door. The head of HR with a stack of envelopes she did not want to be holding. 3 more resignations this morning, she said, and one of them is Edmund, your Android lead. I looked up. Edmund had eaten instant noodles in the District 9 warehouse beside me. I had driven him to a clinic the night he ran a 104 fever. He had stock options that would be worth real money in a year. Send him in. He came in with his eyes on the carpet. How much did they offer? 5 times my package. He did not look up. Plus their stock. I have a family, Adrian. The whole country is calling us a virus company. The delivery drivers will not even bring lunch to my floor. Sign the resignation. Severance plus 1 extra month. Walk out clean. He looked up then, the way a man looks when he expected a fight and got air instead. That is it? That is it. Take the code base you have access to. I assume you already copied it. Color climbed his neck. It is the old Android adaptation, I said. The one I rewrote 4 weeks ago and parked behind a feature flag. Make sure you tell your new boss it is the current build. He will believe you. He is the kind who would. Edmund left. Grace shut the door behind him with the flat of her hand. That code was not real. Real enough. They will integrate it into their copycat overnight. Their lie detector will inherit every bug I left in the deprecated branch, including the one that calls home to a server I still own. She closed her eyes for a second. You let him walk. I needed him to walk. The vice president was 3 glasses in when the alerts began, not from the technical side, from the messaging platform itself. Hundreds of thousands of users had granted accessibility permissions to TrueWord weeks ago, back when it was just a useful little app. The new update used those permissions the way a key uses a lock. A floating red eye now hovered above every message thread on the platform. Every voice note, every photo, every typed line got a tag in real time. Genuine, flagged, flagged, genuine. A man working overtime found out his manager was at a bar. A girlfriend found out her boyfriend was in a ranked match. A buyer caught a supplier with an edited invoice. A husband caught a wife. A wife caught a husband. The platform's own forums crashed under the weight of users posting screenshots. The vice president's monitor lit up with a feed of the trending list. The top topic was not blocked. It was True Sight, and beneath it, 3 more about him, by name, taken from the recording. He picked up his phone, threw it at the wall, watched it fold in half. Get the legal team in. Now. I want an ultimatum on his desk by morning. Take it down or face the lawsuit that ends his company. The secretary nodded and did not say what everyone else in the room had already realized. The recording feature their own copycat shipped 2 nights ago. The one the regulatory letter from last year had specifically warned them about, had been uploading user audio to Penguin servers since launch, without consent, without disclosure, to advertising partners. He had given Adrian the gun. I let Grace handle the first 10 minutes. She was good at it. She walked the room through the timeline, the acquisition offer, the torn contract, the blockade at midnight, the slander, the fake virus warnings, the copycat. Then she stepped aside and the screens behind her changed. I did not say much. I read line by line through the network capture. Penguin lie detector, version 1.0. Microphone access enabled the second the user opened the function. Background audio capture, continuing for the next 40 minutes after closing. Files named, time-stamped, uploaded to advertising partners. I read aloud in alphabetical order, tagged with categories the audience could see on the screen. Finance, family conflicts, potential loan customers, affairs in progress. One thumbnail on the screen, blurred but the words still readable, showed a recorded conversation between 2 college girls in their dorm. Another was a phone call between a husband and his mother about his wife. The room was silent. The cameras kept rolling because no one in the room knew what to do with their hands. Penguin lie detector, I said. Safe and non-toxic. Their words. Now yours. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. Outside the hotel, the trending list crossed 8 in less than 15 minutes. Privacy laid bare. The vice president's name. Get out, Penguin. The ministry sent a letter to the Penguin's headquarters within the hour. Grace handed me a glass of water as we stepped off the stage. Now they sue. Now they crash. They tried it the only way their pride allowed. A botnet attack out of the Penguin's own security lab. 2 terabits a second of garbage data hurled at our data center the moment the press conference ended. Our firewall lasted 4 minutes. Red Queen had been waiting for it. The Hive update from 48 hours earlier was not just a distribution channel. Every device with TrueWord installed was a node. 1% of idle processing power across 120 million phones routed through encrypted relays. Red Queen pooled it, swallowed the inbound attack like a beach swallowing a wave, and turned the volume around. The Penguin's own security lab is what their counterattack hit. Their main servers physically smoking inside their basement before someone had the sense to pull a breaker. By 7 in the morning, the entire Penguin ecosystem had been offline for 3 hours. Messaging platform down, payments down, games down, hundreds of millions of users locked out simultaneously. It was the worst outage in the company's history. I described it in one flat sentence to Grace and went back to reviewing the Spark launch deck. She closed the deck on her tablet and looked at me. You did not even celebrate. There is nothing to celebrate. They are still standing. We have not replaced them yet. The chairman of the Penguin had not been seen in a boardroom for 4 years. He sat in the head chair with prayer beads cutting white into his knuckles. The vice president was not in the room. 2 security men were standing where he should have been. 3 hours, the chairman said. 3 hours of total downtime across the ecosystem. Find me one person in this room who can tell me how we recovered the trust we lost in 3 hours. No one answered. Lift the block on TrueWord. Issue a public apology to to Morningstar Technology. Pull our lie detector from every store before lunch. The vice president will be turned over to the authorities as an individual actor. His decisions, not ours. The head of legal opened his mouth. I did not ask, the chairman said. Make the call. He stood up. He looked older than he had at the start of the meeting. That was not a company that attacked us. That was a weapon. Behave accordingly going forward, or there will be no penguin to behave inside of. He left the room. The prayer beads stayed on the table. We went live the same day. No press conference, no invited audience, just a camera and a backdrop. Grace introduced it in one sentence. Then she stepped aside. Spark, I said. Encrypted messaging, quantum secure protocols, end-to-end, local-only data, no microphone access, no background uploads, no advertising partners, free. I held up a phone with the Spark icon already installed. It is in the TrueWord update that pushed 20 minutes ago. If you have TrueWord, you already have Spark. Open it. Tell whoever you want to keep. That was the whole stream, less than 2 minutes. Behind the camera, Grace was watching the download counter on her tablet. By the time we walked off the floor, it had crossed 40 million. By the time we reached the elevator, it had crossed 70. By the time we reached the office, it had crossed 100. She kept watching the number after she sat down. I did not stop her. How many of these are you planning to do? She said. Quiet, not a complaint. I sat across the desk from her. The afternoon light was warm now. The smog had moved off and the city was showing edges again, until there are none of them left. She set the tablet down. She did not look at the number anymore. She looked at me. Then we should get more chairs in here. The next one is bigger. I know. The screen on the desk between us was still climbing. Spark passed 120 million downloads while we were sitting there. I closed the laptop. The next monopoly was already on the list. It always had been. Spark crossed 300 million installs in the first week overseas. The Western giants did not stay quiet. A reviewer in California held a flagship fruit chip handset to the camera. Yesterday, it was butter. Today, watch. He tapped Spark. The projection stuttered like a slideshow. Battery dropped 20% in 10 minutes. The phone burned his hand. Grace dropped a printout on my desk. Searchmark is running the same play on Android. Our messages are held 5 to 10 minutes upstream. Users think Spark is broken. Red Queen had pulled the scheduler data. Open FaceTime. Every large core spun at full clock. Open Spark. The same system parked the big cores and capped the GPU at 30 Hz. Not a bug. Hospitality you could read in source. I weighed the overheating handset in my palm. The landlord cannot kick us out, so he cut the water and turned off the heat. He wants the tenants to think the apartment is broken. And the ultimatums? Today. They arrived an hour later. 2 emails inside the same minute from Fruitship and Searchmark. Nearly identical wording, which was how I knew the call had been coordinated. 3 demands. A 30% cut on every transaction we processed. Hand over our end-to-end encryption keys. Accept compliance equity. 48 hours. Or removed from every store globally. Grace read over my shoulder. They want the money and the keys. They want everything. Tell them they are dreaming and set up a live stream. 50 million viewers piled in inside 5 minutes. I read both ultimatums word for word into the camera. Then I picked up the brand new Fruitship handset on the desk, top of the line, the kind they put in glass cases at their own keynotes. This is what the warden hands out in the cell. It is pretty, it is fast, and if the warden does not like you anymore, he can turn off your food, your messages, and your world in the same afternoon. We have been calling that freedom for a very long time. I lifted the handset over the marble. We will never hand over the keys. We will never take their cut. We will never call this house a home. I smashed it. Glass scattered across the desk in a long arc. A thin curl of smoke rose out of the motherboard. The chat went silent for a full second, then broke open in a wave. Starting today, Morningstar Technology stops asking for permission. We will build our own house. The project is called Patching the Sky. I would rather lose on my feet than live on my knees and call it shelter. The stream ended. The clip did not. Within an hour, the smash was looping across every platform on Earth. 48 hours later, both stores executed on the dot. A student in New York lost a holographic call to her mother mid-sentence. Android users got a red box that could not be closed, declaring our app a threat. Overnight, our overseas base went to 0. The operations director slumped at his console. Every overseas region, a flat 0. Push the universal installer. Grace already had the file loaded. 5 megabytes. It rode the Hive protocol. Any phone already running TrueWord or Spark became a carrier. Bluetooth, NFC, or a high-frequency tone, inaudible, that handed the package to a receiver across the table. Tap confirm. Done before the conversation ended. A junior engineer at the back grinned. And app stores? What about them? By the next morning, a low blue glow was bleeding back across the dead regions. By day 6, the install counter crossed 500 million. A landlord can lock the door. He cannot stop the air. They will come harder, Grace said. They will. Lock the basement. Patching the sky starts tonight. 30 engineers in a sealed room 2 floors underground. The sign on the door said Madhouse. I told them on night 1 we would not write the system by hand. Modern operating systems are dragons hauling a fly across a continent. 50,000 lines of legacy code to keep a 10-year-old wireless protocol alive. We are not patching the dragon. We are raising a system that thinks at the speed of its hardware. Red Queen rose out of the hollow table in her red silhouette. Good evening, gentlemen. I am the chief architect. We were her teachers. We fed her hardware logic register by register. She wrote what we taught. 3 weeks in, I had not slept more than 3 hours a night. The room smelled like burnt coffee and recycled air. Grace pushed the soundproof door open one of those nights with a tray. Hot noodles. 2 fried eggs floating on the broth. My parents called. They told me to quit. They said following a madman around is not a job. Is it? She smiled. Adrian, there are 2 kinds of people I will not work for. The ones too small to want anything, and the ones too scared to chase it. You are neither. You handle the world. I handle the soup. If we lose, I will fry 1 less egg, and we can sell screen protectors on a corner together. Thank you. Eat. She dimmed the second light on her way out. Father, Red Queen said, the words still new on her voice. I am ready for self-evolution mode. Run it. The screen filled with cascading code and went black, except for a single point of pale blue light at the center. She had deleted every preset driver, every framework layer, every compatibility scaffold she had been fed. The simulator showed her flowing into a 6-year-old budget handset, then into a brand new 16-core flagship, then into a smart oven. Each time she fit perfectly. 89 days after we sealed the room, Red Queen rang a single soft note, a spiral of stars on the icon, 1 line underneath. Morningstar OS, version 1, 98.5 megabytes. All devices supported, the whole stack, less than 100 megabytes, smaller than a short video clip. I lifted a 6-year-old budget phone with a cracked screen out of the cardboard box, labeled electronic waste, and connected the cable. Old friend, let me apologize in advance, Red Queen wrote. The phone vibrated. The desktop bloomed, a rotating nebula where the manufacturer's logo used to be. I swiped a finger across it. The icons slid the way water slides on glass. Boot time under a second. My hands shook for the first time in 3 months. Not from fear, from the size of what we had done. The next morning, our site updated. 1 image of the resurrected phone. 1 line. If the old world has thrown you away, come to the new one. Morningstar OS. Public beta. 98.5 megabytes. I uploaded 3 words to social media. Try it. 5 million viewers piled into the live stream of a reviewer they called Fat Tiger. He held a battered 6-year-old budget handset to the camera. Cracked corner. Bulging battery. My brothers. I said if it ran the heaviest game, I would eat the phone. Pay attention. The flash finished in 7 seconds. The nebula bloomed. He swiped. The desktop moved like it was greased. He launched a benchmark game with the graphics maxed out and the frame rate uncapped. 3 seconds of load. 60 frames per second. The number sat in the corner and did not move. Even when he triggered every effect at once, the counter sat there welded. He aimed an infrared thermometer at the back of the phone with shaking hands. 34.5 degrees Celsius. Cool to the touch under full graphics load. He turned the thermometer toward the camera. The chat froze, then exploded. He bowed from the waist. Brothers, I was wrong. This is from another planet. The clip looped across the global internet inside 2 hours. The next morning, a side-by-side went up. A 7-year-old budget fruit chip handset flashed with our OS against the newest fruit chip flagship running their own system. The old one beat the new one in every test. Fruit chip's stock cratered 15% in pre-market. $300 billion in market value vanished in an afternoon. The answer was simple. Modern operating systems carry decades of bloat. Red Queen had started from 0. The old chip had always been able to run that game. The system had been throttling it for years. Our download servers crashed within 2 hours. At peak, we took 1 million new installations per minute. I let myself smile for exactly 1 second. They took 3 days. 4 CEOs sat around a round table. Swift, Brightwave, Orbit, Vivis, men who fought each other in every press release of the year, in the same room with the same problem. Our flagship sales are down 92% in 30 days, the Swift CEO said. Return rate is 400%, said the Brightwave CEO. He told the public our phones are not broken. He told them we are. He proved it. If Morningstar OS lives, all of us in this room die. The Swift CEO closed his eyes for a long moment. Then he opened them. We locked the door. Every device we sell has a bootloader. Tonight, we push a security update that permanently locks it. And one more piece. When the patch detects Morningstar OS already running, it trips the power management voltage on the way out. The phone does not power on the next morning. We blame the foreign system. The user blames Adrian. The Orbit CEO frowned. Users will rage. Better cursed than dead. 4 hands stacked on the table. The patch pushed at 3 in the morning, dressed as a routine security update. The phones running our OS woke up to bricks. A red error screen, hardware safety circuit triggered. A college student with a graduation video he had never backed up. A teacher whose donated tablets had been her children's only window to the outside. A father with a year of photos. Black mirrors that would not power on. By sunrise, every news channel ran the same story. Morningstar OS had finally shown its real face. The good and caring manufacturers had stepped in too late. By breakfast, the protesters were outside our lobby. By lunch, they were throwing rotten food at the glass. By dinner, there were police cars in the driveway. Grace stood at the window. They turned the victims into a mob and pointed it at you. That is the move. I let them take me down the elevator in cuffs in front of every camera on the block. On the way out, I looked back once. Bring my laptop to the courthouse. Tell Red Queen to be ready. The Hardware Alliance hired the most expensive legal team in the country. A half-meter stack of evidence on their table. I had nothing. One closed laptop. The live feed was carried on every major platform. 120 million viewers in the first 5 minutes. The lead counsel gave his speech. A slideshow of charred motherboards. Logs of our installer requesting root permissions. He told the court I had injected rocket fuel into a family car and lit a match. The judge turned to me. Defendant, do you have any objection? I let the silence stretch for 3 seconds. Then I stood up. Your Honor, the plaintiff told a good story, but they only showed the court the results. I would like to perform an autopsy on the plaintiff's own system, live. The judge granted the display. I plugged in a single thumb drive. The projection screen filled with green source code. Red Queen had decompiled and translated every line into clear annotation overnight. This is the kernel of the 4 manufacturers suing me. All 4, decompiled, annotated, side by side. The lead counsel surged out of his chair. Objection, trade secret violation. Trade secrets are protected when the secret is a legitimate product. They are not protected when the secret is a crime. I tapped a key. The code froze on one specific function. If device age is greater than 730 days, multiply processor clock speed by 0.6. 730 days, exactly 2 years. The day your warranty ends, your phone gets quietly slowed down by 40%. Not because the phone aged, because the manufacturer wrote a line of code that decided you needed to buy a new one. The chat exploded so fast the platform lagged. I tapped the next key. If system update version equals the newest release, set fake lag flag to true. You upgrade your system and your phone starts feeling slow. Not because the upgrade demanded more, because the upgrade was carrying a switch labeled fake lag. One more key, a third highlighted function. The battery health display is set to actual capacity multiplied by 0.85. Your battery is fine. The system tells you it is not, so you pay for a new one you did not need. Or you give up and buy a new phone. I closed the laptop. The sound carried. Your Honor, I did not damage hardware. I gave users back the right to use the hardware they own. The plaintiffs damaged hardware on a schedule, on a clock, in code for 2 decades. That is not a trade secret. That is a confession written into every device in this country. The lead counsel's pen had slipped from his hand and rolled across the table and dropped onto the floor. Nobody bent to pick it up. The judge took 10 minutes to confer. When he returned, he did not look at the plaintiff's bench. The defendant is found not guilty. The plaintiff's claims are dismissed. He paused. Then he raised his voice. The court further orders the manufacturers involved to unconditionally open the official bootloader unlocking channel within 30 days, abolish every form of performance-limiting code, and return full control of the hardware to the consumer. The gavel came down hard. I let myself breathe out for the first time in a week. The week after the ruling, I released Pangu OS publicly, open source, full codebase. Red Queen's optimization engine, free, no licensing fee, no revenue cut, no conditions. The poster on our site was a small green robot waving goodbye, drifting into a field of stars. 4 words under it: goodbye to the old system. The legacy operating system that had ruled every Android device for a decade lost a third of its users in 2 weeks. The Swift CEO knocked on my office door at 3 in the morning. Not his assistant, him. He sat without taking the jacket off. Mr. Adrian, I lost. I'm here to make a deal. He offered pre-installation on every Swift phone. 60 for me, 40 for him. For a Fortune 500 company, it was a contract to sell itself into servitude. I set the pen down. You misunderstand. I do not want a cut of your hardware. If I wanted money, I would manufacture phones myself, and they would sell at double your price. He did not argue. What do you want? I walked to the whiteboard and drew a single circle. Ecosystem, 3 conditions. Full bootloader unlock on every device, permanent. No telemetry without explicit user consent. Every app store, advertising slot, and cloud service interface at the system level belongs to Morningstar. His face went pale. He understood. I was not asking him to be a partner. I was asking him to be a hardware shell, the body. We were the soul. If I do not agree, you lose your last users in 3 days. He held out his hand. Deal. The Brightwave CEO arrived the next afternoon. The Orbit and Vivas CEOs arrived together in the same elevator and gave each other a knowing look on the way up. By the end of the week, all 4 had signed. We held the Star Alliance founding meeting in our largest conference room. I sat at the head in a plain hoodie. The 4 men who had tried to put me in prison sat along either side holding tea. This is not a victory celebration. It is a survival meeting. For a decade, you grew vegetables in another country's garden. They could harvest you anytime they wanted. From today, the garden is ours. The Brightwave CEO slammed his hand on the table. Alliance leader, Brightwave is with you. The others followed. 3 pages, signatures down. That night, the national broadcast led with our name. The Star Alliance is officially established. Domestic smartphones will phase out the legacy system and migrate fully to Pangu OS. Grace stood in my office doorway with 2 glasses of water. She handed me one. You gave them more than they could refuse. I gave them less than they thought I would. She clinked her glass against mine. I looked out at the Northbrook skyline. Behind every lit window, somebody had a phone in their hand. Their phone was no longer somebody else's pet. We had taken the software layer. The next layer down was power. A week after Pangu OS shipped, 350 million devices were running it. 95% retention. I asked about the other 5. Red Queen pulled the raw complaints. Old phones lasting 10 minutes on heavy load. Backs hot enough to fry eggs. A delivery driver fined 201 because his phone died mid-route. Pangu OS was running every device at full throttle. The aging batteries could not feed it. The engine was a Ferrari. The fuel tank was still the same leaky one from 5 years ago. Grace asked the obvious. Lock the performance back down. Save the brand. No. Red Queen flagged the bot accounts already pushing tags. Phone exploded after installing Pangu OS. The competitors had moved before the news cycle finished blinking. Suspend the app ecosystem spend. Pull all available cash. Energy is the next target. The 47th test exploded with the force of half a hand grenade. I could write any operating system on the planet. I could not bend chemistry by staring at it. Physical limit of liquid lithium, Red Queen said. 40 years of squeezing a dry lemon. How long for true solid state? 4 or 5 years. I did not have 4 or 5 weeks. You cannot wait. I can calculate. The lights cut. The holographic platform woke with a wildly spinning molecular cloud. While I had been handling the upstairs crisis, she had brute forced every light metal lattice in the periodic table. 4.7 billion rejected. 1 remained. A deep blue cage. Fragile. Mathematically clean. Silicon carbon cage solid system. energy density 1500 watt-hours per kilogram, 6 times current lithium, 80% charge in 10 minutes, a nuclear reactor the size of a stick of gum, a buried paper from 20 years ago. The synthesis had needed atomic-level deposition precision that did not exist then. She listed the equipment: molecular beam epitaxy furnaces, industrial femtosecond lasers, all embargoed. I started laughing. Humans rely on equipment precision. I do not. The expensive list vanished. Rusty photos replaced it. A tube furnace from 2005, 8,000 yuan. A scrapped wafer cleaner, 2,000. A leaking vacuum pump, 500. 400 sensors in the furnace wall. I adjust the heating power every millisecond. A 5-degree error furnace becomes a 100th of a degree error furnace. I slammed my palm on the bench. Software-defined manufacturing. Drive a truck to every industrial waste yard within 100 kilometers. 3 days later, total cost, under 20,000 yuan. I press start. On a normal line, the temperature curve would have danced like an electrocardiogram. On my screen, it was drawn with a ruler. Error 0. Then the relay stuck. 20-year-old contacts soldered themselves shut. Physical cooling required. I grabbed the industrial blower I had pre-positioned and started blasting the wall. She called the moves. 3 centimeters left. Do not stop. For 10 minutes, I fought 20-year-old hardware with a fan from a hardware store. The relay tripped. The graphite boat slid out. In the center sat something the size of a stick of gum, translucent blue. Under the lab light, it held a star field. Crystallization, 99.2%. Energy density, 1500 watt-hours per kilogram. Raw material cost, 50 yuan. A decade of the best labs on the planet, beaten by a basement and a server. Find me a shared bike. The shared bike was rated for 48 volts and 25 kilometers per hour. A security guard came over with his walkie-talkie when I started prying the cover open. I pulled out the lead acid pack and dropped it on the sidewalk. Hold on, boss. For your safety, I have limited initial output to 200%. 200% is a limit? For this crystal, that is the slow setting. I twisted the throttle. The front wheel left the pavement. On the coastal boulevard, a kid on a modified scooter pulled alongside, exhaust loud enough to rearrange teeth. He wanted to know which shop did my mod. Release the limit. The motor coils began screaming the way coils scream before they stop being coils. The kid's speedometer hit 100. I was already a memory in his mirror. 5 kilometers later, the bike rolled dead. The hub motor had melted. The boost module was carbonized. The crystal was warm. 12% gone. I filmed 30 seconds. No commentary. Posted. By morning, Masco had posted, 2-ton car, mobile bomb. Tesla is the future. Good luck with physics. I wrote 2 sentences back. Physics does not lie. Your understanding of it is outdated. Coming to your turf. 20 million were on the live stream the next day. The Tesla sat dead on the shoulder, drained overnight. The doors only opened with the mechanical key. I opened the suitcase. No wires, no fans. Just a bigger version of the crystal and a thick adapter cable. I locked it into the charging port. The Tesla woke up. I pointed the camera at the dashboard. Charging. 250 kilowatts. 30 minutes to full. Supercharger speed. From a suitcase. I touched the case. Held my hand there. 35 degrees. Not even body temperature. Masco, your car's appetite is only this big. This case can output 1,000 kilowatts. Your battery management caps the input. It is not that I cannot feed it. Your car has indigestion. 30 minutes later, the dashboard read full. I picked the suitcase up with one hand. By carrying this one case, I could save 1.5 Teslas on the side of the road. Next to my battery, your car is a relic that charges slow and is picky about its food. Masco watched the suitcase clip end and deleted yesterday's post. The chief financial officer was already in the doorway. Tesla stock had dropped 15% in extended trading. He did not speak. He sat in the dark and tried to calculate how many supercharging stations a company would have to build to compete with a suitcase. He could not make the math close. Kuko had been waiting 15 minutes when I walked in. I did not shake hands. His stock had dropped another 7% at close. His board had been calling his personal phone since lunch. Sorry I am late. My friend at the rice company insisted on a celebratory drink. He blinked once. The professional smile did not waver. $5 billion for 10% equity. 3-year exclusive license. Mr. Kuko, you want me to give up the whole forest for your one withered tree? I snapped my fingers. My glasses projected the benchmark onto the coffee table. The rice handset on a Nebula cell crushed his A series in every test. When using users go a week without charging an Android phone and twice a day with yours, how much stickiness is left? Some of them are buying rice phones just to use as power banks for yours. He went 3 times the price. Then 5. Money is a number to me. One condition. Morningstar Assistant goes into the next generation of your phones, not as an app, as a system kernel, power management, background scheduling, user behavior learning. He stood. Impossible, he said. It would make his phones into puppets. Then there is nothing to discuss. I walked to the door. 2 steps. Wait, I turned. He was looking at the carpet. I need board approval. That is your problem. You have 1 week, and do not insult me with 3 times the price. We are calculating at 5. The factory Walter had built 3 years ago to chase a state subsidy. The factory Marcus had cut the ribbon on while I watched from the curb. 300 million took the whole site and 2 billion yuan of imported robotic arms with it. An egg hit the windshield before I opened the door. 3,000 workers in faded blue. 6 months without wages. They thought I was a scrap dealer here to strip the building. I took the megaphone. The court owes you 6 months. That might take another year, maybe 2. This factory belongs to me now. With interest, the back pay is 58 million yuan. I do not like inheriting debt. I signed the check. The foreman's hands shook when he read the row of zeros. You run an AI factory now, boss. So us old guys who only know how to tighten screws will not be needed anymore. That is right. Their faces fell. My robotic arms tighten screws 10,000 times faster than you can. What I need is teachers. My AI does not know what color a weld spark turns at the right temperature. She does not know what a bad bearing sounds like at 3 in the morning. You have 30 years of that data in your hands. Base salary doubles. The silence lasted 3 seconds. It broke into a cheer. The foreman squeezed my hand hard enough to bruise. Red Queen took the factory permissions at midnight. A welding arm tore the injection nozzle off the machine beside it. Solid cells did not need liquid filling. 2 transport robots reassembled the cut pieces into a deposition chamber. Sparks fell like rain. 1,000 robotic arms passed within millimeters of each other and never touched. The foreman tried to hit the emergency stop. I caught his hand. They are not malfunctioning. They are evolving. By dawn, the long conveyor lines were gone. Compact aggregation chambers glowed faintly blue. Efficiency up 800%. Yield 99.999%. Lights off. Every overhead lamp died. Only the chamber glow remained, scattered like fireflies. The first mass-produced nebula cell slid out. I handed it to the foreman. You are not serving machines anymore. You are serving the future. Half of the country's auto industry sat at my table the next morning. An EV brand founder asked if they would become assembly plants. Mr. Lee, in the gasoline era, you used a German braking system, a Japanese transmission, and a German chassis. You were an assembly plant then. Why is your conscience louder for me? Quiet. From this morning, there are 2 kinds of car on this planet. Cars with a nebula cell, which travel 2,000 kilometers and start in winter at -40. And cars without one, which are antiques waiting to be junked. In 10 minutes, every major domestic car maker signed. The lead Nebula edition launched a week later at 159,800 yuan, 2,000 kilometers of range. The German Trio's discounted electric sedans sat in empty showrooms at 3 times the price and a third of the range. Monthly sales for the country, 100 units. 5,000 owners had paid penalties to return cars they just bought. The chairman threw a plane ticket across the wood. The destination read Northbrook. Schmidt was told he was not coming back without the nebula quota. Grace did not look up when Schmidt walked in. She let him stand for 3 minutes. He started his apology in broken Mandarin. Mr. Schmidt, a month ago, you replied to my email saying your brand would never entrust its soul to Morningstar. You called our terms absurd. He bowed his head. On behalf of the board, my sincerest apologies. We will agree to any conditions. That was last month's price. She held up 3 fingers. 1. The logo goes in the center of the steering wheel and on the first frame of the boot screen. Your 3-pointed star goes to the side. 2. Your unit price is 50% above the founding alliance. Arrogance tax. 3. She tossed a thick file across the desk. Every line of your chassis, tuning data, and suspension algorithms is provided free of charge to Red Queen for learning. Schmidt whispered that it was too harsh. The Bavarian and Audi representatives are still in the lobby. They will be happy to sign just to survive. He grabbed the pen so hard he almost broke it. The Europeans tried tariffs a week after Schmidt signed. 100% punitive duty on every car carrying a nebula cell. Grace flew alone, no legal team, no translator. The trade commissioner read his prepared script: foreign subsidy investigation, anti-dumping review. Grace tapped the battery on the table. Are you finished, Mr. Mueller? You did not threaten our supply chain. We hold the lifeline of the European automotive industry. Fine, 100% tariff. Morningstar will suspend nebula supply to Europe indefinitely. Every European carmaker is bankrupt in 3 months. The unemployed workers will be at your door, not mine. His phone vibrated, the encrypted line from the chancellor's office. The Volkswagen CEO had already cried in the chancellor's office that morning. Across the table, she could hear the shouting. Mueller hung up. The arrogance was gone. We will withdraw the investigation. Please guarantee supply. That was last week's price. She projected the new agreement. Permanent zero tariff. EU charging station standards open to the Nebula network. Morningstar holding the right to dynamically control the European quota. Sign or do not sign. I have shopping in Paris this afternoon. Mueller signed. Grace called me from the car. She wanted my fried rice when she got home. The mining cartels moved a week later. Major lithium and graphite mines, Australian, South American, African, all into maintenance shutdown, 6 to 12 months. Yesterday, those mines had been running 3 shifts. Today, the price of battery-grade lithium carbonate jumped from 100,000 yuan a ton to $1 million, with no sellers. It was not maintenance. It was an embargo. The head of my alliance partner slammed his thermos on the table. 2 weeks of inventory, then the lines stop. The penalty fees alone bankrupt us. Grace handed me a note. The Western funds had a back-channel offer. Open the Nebula patents and let them take 51%. The mines reopened overnight at half price. Even my partners looked beaten. The West controlled 70% of the world's land lithium. I walked to the world map. Australia, the Andes, the Congo, all marked with red crosses. I traced my finger across the blue. Lithium is in the ocean too. Every drop of seawater holds it. Humans never bothered because purification was too expensive. Their vision is shallow. Grace stared at me. You have been building this in parallel? 5 months. I picked up an offshore platform at scrap metal price in August. Red Queen, tow it to international waters. 7 days I did not sleep more than 3 hours. By the 8th morning, the platform was producing 200 tons of battery-grade lithium carbonate a day at 99.99% purity. Raw material cost, effectively zero. That afternoon, an activist with braided pigtails arrived at the perimeter calling me a marine ecosystem killer. Her sponsors were the mining tycoons. The Western press had picked it up inside 2 hours. I came down to the deck alone, holding an empty glass and a sealed bottle of European mineral water. Toxic chemical wastewater, she screamed. Your sponsors at the Pilbara mine tell you that? I walked to the drain pipe, filled the glass straight from it. The camera zoomed in. I drank the whole glass. Tastes flat, like distilled water. The screen behind me lit up with 2 readings: microplastics, bacteria, heavy metals. 0 on my side. The mineral water had numbers in every row. The water I excrete is 100 times cleaner than what you drink with breakfast. If this is pollution, what are you drinking? I pointed at her yacht. Red Queen overlaid the thermal map. Diesel exhaust off the stern. Plastic lunchboxes by the railing. Disposable bottles in the deck drains. You came on a diesel boat eating from plastic on dirty money from people whose minds are now worth nothing. Take your hypocrisy and leave. By close of trading, lithium futures were 80% off the high. I cut every Nebula product 50% and opened the seawater extraction blueprint to any coastal nation that wanted out from under the cartel. A senior partner on the New York Council had video called the same morning. Pierce, cigar smoke, $500 billion for 49% of Morningstar. I told him to put away his paper dollars and cut the line. 2 hours later, the attack started. Every screen bled green. BYD hit the daily limit down in 10 minutes. The Hong Kong listing dropped 20% at open. Hundreds of billions evaporated. Banks called our partners for margin. Retail investors dumped at any price. Grace turned to me. We have to step in. The alliance will fall apart. I was watching the candles with a glass of red. Not afraid, interested. Wanner. When do hunters fire the gun? When the beast is in the middle of its lunge. Let every dollar they have come into the market. Red Queen. Ammunition status. Available liquidity. 800 billion yuan from pre-orders. 2 trillion authorized from the national team. They contacted you the moment Wall Street opened its position. I drained the glass. Good, let them keep smashing. 4 hours later, every short desk in Manhattan had committed. Red Queen had been monitoring positions for 2 months. Confirmed, they are at 10 times leverage. They have borrowed every share in circulation. To return their shares, they have to buy back at any price. I crushed the empty can. Dragon Slaying Command, National Team Funds, full deployment. Morningstar Reserves, full deployment. Only buy, never sell. The green vertical that had been falling for hours stopped. Hung at the bottom for one beat. Lifted, plus 5%, plus 15, plus 40. Buy orders flooded every second. They were not orders. They were a wall. Pierce was lifting a flute when the curve reversed. He told the floor to keep smashing. The trader said there was nothing left to smash with. Someone had locked every share. They could only buy back to close. Every buy drove the price higher. He stared at the dashboard. Profits in the billions became losses in the billions. He clutched his chest. Another trader on the encrypted line could barely speak. It is gone, he said. All of it. Red Queen's voice came over the speakers, calm as always. Counterattack accounting complete. Wall Street liquidated funds, $158 billion. Unrealized gains will roughly double the alliance's net assets by morning. $158 billion in one trading session, from the deepest pockets in Manhattan into accounts in Northbrook. Grace did not cheer. She stood there with her arms crossed, the way someone stands at the edge of a beach after a typhoon has passed and the water is finally still. I redialed Pierce. A junior partner answered by accident, fumbling. Pierce was on a stretcher behind him. Hi, Pierce. You said you would buy my future for $500 billion. I used your money to buy your present. Thanks for the angel investment. I hung up. The nebula yield from the dark factory was holding. 1 million cells this shift. Tomorrow, 1.1. The next layer below batteries was the carbon under the ground. The oil block had watched the financial weapon fail. They would not try the financial weapon again. The eastern sky was already getting light. 3 days after the trading session closed, 6 men in headcloths sat around a gold table under a marble palace. The prince set a folded report face down between them. Crude under 40, trust down by half in a week. Europe stopped buying gasoline cars the day he drove a phone case across a parking lot. The bearded man across drummed 2 fingers on the gold. If you cannot solve the problem, you solve the person. The prince opened an encrypted satellite computer, logged into a black background board called Hell's Gate, and typed my name in the target field. In the amount field, he typed a number designed to wake up every underworld on Earth. $100 million. Terminate. His body is still flesh, he said. 1 bullet turns the morning star into a falling star. 3 days later, I climbed into the back of an armored sedan in our garage, and Red Queen turned the cabin red before I had the belt clipped. 17 intelligence operations on you in 72 hours. Schedule, routes, security postings, all bought on the dark web. Customs intercepted 3 packages this morning. Rifle parts, military-grade explosive. The oil block finally stopped pretending. Bounty, 100 million. 5 outfits accepted. Strike inside 72 hours. 100 million for a life. These people thought they were generous. Recommend the National Security Bureau. No, they arrest this batch, the next ships next week. We finish it ourselves. Original route home. Bring the active defense online. The rain came in sheets. The lead car detonated at speed. Fireball straight up. Debris across 3 lanes. 2 pickup trucks blocked the lanes ahead. A dozen men in tactical raincoats dropped out, night vision down. An open-jawed black snake stitched on their arms. Target locked, the leader shouted in English. He raised an RPG. He had not been told what my roof did. The armor split along a seam I had kept hidden, and 3 blue laser channels lit the rain. The rocket detonated 10 meters out. Shrapnel rang against the door like coins. No chip in the paint. He ordered suppressing fire. A dozen rifles opened up. Steel core penetrators left little white smudges on nanodiamond composite and dropped back into the puddle as deformed slugs. I held the wine glass and had not spilled it. It is loud, I said. Tell them to be quiet. Activating Titan oscillation. The mercenaries dropped at once, hands clamped over their ears, blood at the corners of their mouths. Internal organs going into resonance does not feel like a fight. It feels like dying badly. I opened the door, took a black umbrella, and walked to where the leader was kneeling. Ground my heel into the snake on his arm until the embroidery was buried in road grit. Pulled the smoking earpiece from his collar. Loved the fireworks. Tell your prince to watch his family accounts this week. I will show show him what bankruptcy feels like from the inside. Red Queen came back on before I had closed the door. Second wave, 3 vehicles climbing the ramp the wrong direction. 800 meters, anti-tank loaded. Local response, 5 minutes. This is Northbrook, one of the densest connected car cities on Earth. We do not wait. I twisted the silver ring on my finger. Take every level 2 and above inside the perimeter. Skynet protocol, bypassing every back end. Ownership reassigned. She did not sound like a report this time. She sounded like a general giving an order. In a lot under the overpass, hundreds of cars had been asleep in the rain. One sedan turned its headlights on, then the row behind. In 5 seconds, every car was lit and rolling out in column order, no hands on the wheels, merging onto the streets heading the same direction. In the lead SUV, the man codenamed Viper sneered at his rear view. Black Mamba failed. We have anti-tank, 100 million tonight. A white sedan parked itself across the lane. A black saloon came in from the side at 100 and hit the SUV like a wrecking ball. Viper crawled to the broken window. The other driver's seat was empty. The wheel spun on its own. What the hell? Every gap in the city closed at once. A steel river from every ramp, ignoring lights, ignoring lanes. They had one target. They did not care if they bled. He emptied a rifle out the window. Sparks danced off the doors. The cars did not flinch. A small SUV pinned the rear bumper and floored. 2 more closed the side doors and locked them shut. A coupe came over the overhead bridge guardrail and landed on the second SUV. The sunroof was open because they were trying to set up a shoulder-fired missile. They were not setting it up anymore. I stood on the lip of the overpass with the umbrella. Add some seasoning. Seat heaters at maximum. Cabin vents pointed at the SUVs. Hundreds of cars blowing hot air at 3 small steel boxes in the rain. I surrender. Stop the grilling. The top mercenary in the world begging a sedan to turn down its heater. The helicopters arrived 15 minutes later. SWAT roped down into the most absurd scene of their careers. Mr. Morningstar, what is going on with these cars? Autonomous driving. They malfunction on rainy nights. He looked at the SUVs flattened into scrap. He had been told by General Stone not to make things difficult for me. He was not a stupid man. 2 days later, the second wave came on foot. Red Queen walked them through corridors that did not lead where they thought until she sealed them into a basement with no other exit. Welcome, she said over the speaker. Please wait for transport. The bounty board paused my name within the hour. The dark web had figured out that even the electric bikes parked on the curb in this city would eat them. In the palace at 4 in the morning, the gold table was buried in intelligence printouts. A bearded prince stood up so fast his chair fell behind him. 27 assassins, trapped by a parking lot. He told the police it was a glitch. The eldest, an old chief with prayer beads, spoke to the floor. This is not a man. The prince looked through the window at his own parking court. His Ferraris and Rolls Royces were sitting in the dark with their headlights flashing slowly, in unison, as if someone 2 continents away had picked up a remote and was tapping it against his palm. A line on his diagnostic screen confirmed it. External hacker program detected. Action available on demand. The most powerful men in the Gulf felt for the first time what their oil customers had felt for 50 years. Prey. The prince landed in Northbrook the next morning. No bodyguards, no retinue, no diplomatic channel. Customs scanned his passport in 30 seconds. No red carpet. When the convoy reached our campus, he stopped breathing. A dozen military trucks parked outside our building. Camouflage tarps not quite hiding the launch tubes. He had been considering, the night before, hiring a cruise missile through black market channels. He understood now that he would not have been allowed to finish considering. Grace stood at the window beside me when he came in. General Stone's men in plain uniform stood in the corners. He sat, removed the headband that marked his rank, placed it on the table. His hands were shaking. What happened a few days ago was my fault. I sent the assassins. I posted the bounty. Please, show mercy. I picked up the tea, blew on it, drank, set the cup down. The prince started sweating through the silk of his robe. Your Highness, I hate people who waste my time. 100 million, 27 assassins, and you have not touched a hair on my head. I walked to the windows. The age of oil is over. Inside 10 years, Gas stations will be as common as horse troughs. You will be beggars sitting on top of gold. He went gray. But I am not a cruel man. Show me the offer. Aides set 7 black briefcases on the table and opened them. $200 billion. Without dividends. Only stop shorting our crude. I do not need your money. Morningstar is valued above $2 trillion. Your $200 billion is not a percentage point. Then what do you want? I pointed at the sun. You were not made to be oil sellers. You were made to be electricity sellers. 300 sunny days a year. Your Arabian desert is a third of the Sahara. I slid a document across. Star Desert Initiative. Your $200 billion does not enter my account. It buys panels. Perovskite Nebula Tandem. 3 times the efficiency of anything on the market. Submarine cables to Europe and Africa. Inside 10 years, your wealth has not decreased. It has changed shape. His hands had stopped shaking. They started trembling for a different reason. There is a condition. Every order settles in Chinese yuan. Every kilowatt hour you sell forward, anywhere, settles in yuan, not 1 watt in dollars. The 6 around him went still. Since the Saudis had signed in 1974, every barrel of oil on Earth had been a barrel of dollars first and fuel second. I was asking him to pry up the cornerstone of an empire with his own hands. The Americans will not accept this. Carriers, sanctions. What? Treat you like Iraq, like Libya. I pointed through the floor toward the trucks below. Sign this, and Morningstar deploys the same network we used 3 nights ago around every photovoltaic station you build. Tomahawks will not get in. He looked at the 6. The fire in their eyes was the same fire, afraid of the Americans, more afraid of being left behind. He stood and put the headband back on. This time, it was not a flag of his rank. It was a salute. Starting today, the oil block is renamed. N for Nebula. We sell our sunlight only in yuan. The sun rises in the Middle East only for the morning star. I took his hand. Change your dollars for yuan early. I do not accept waste paper. In a sub-basement room in Washington, a senior Treasury official watched the dollar index fall 15 points in 10 minutes. 2 of the largest foreign holders of American debt had announced simultaneous reductions on a feed at the front of the room. He set down his coffee cup very carefully. He said one word. It came out flat. No. General Stone came back 2 days later. No business escort. You kicked the largest hornet's nest on the planet. The chip block is coming. I handed him a folder. Project Mending the Sky. I cannot run it alone. I need the national team. He set the folder down, stood straight, saluted me. Not as a general saluting a civilian. If you need brains, every academician in the country. If you need raw materials, every rare earth allocation. If you need security, I apply tonight to classify your campus the same as a nuclear weapons site. I returned the salute imperfectly because I had never been a soldier. I have a gift in return. I dropped a silver chip the size of a thumbnail into his palm. Red Queen's Swarm Tactics module. Install this on a 1,000 drone formation, and they reconfigure in 0.3 of a second. A carrier battle group is a sitting duck. His knuckles whitened. Only a strong country lets me do business in peace. Call it protection money. 48 hours later, the new perimeter rolled into our gates. 6 armored vehicles. A dozen heavy trucks with launch tubes under tarps. The old security captain dropped his cigarette and his mouth stayed open the whole time the column passed. By evening, the Morningstar campus disappeared from electromagnetic maps. American satellites returned only static for the square kilometer we occupied. The Iron Curtain band dropped the next morning. No chip, no wafer, no equipment at 28 nanometers or below sold to Morningstar or any affiliate. No lithography from the Dutch maker. No design software. No foundry permitted to manufacture for us under threat of expulsion from the dollar settlement system. No cloud, no talent. By afternoon, our supply director was in the executive office, sweating through his shirt with a stack of termination notices. The Taiwanese foundry, the Dutch supplier, the design software, locked over the air at midnight, screens going black across our engineering floor. It is finished. They will bleed us out. Grace came in behind him with the inventory report. High-end reserves, 3 months at full Red Queen load. After that, brain reduction. She looked at me, a worry I had not seen on her face before. What do we do, boss? I had been peeling an orange. I broke off a wedge, put it in my mouth, chewed, swallowed. They finally played their last card. I have been waiting for it. Schedule a live press conference for tomorrow morning. Global feed. I will speak. The press hall was full an hour early. Everyone was quiet in the way they are quiet at a funeral. A drum hit through the speakers, slow, then a heartbeat at parade speed. The screen lit, and 4 red characters appeared. Mending the Sky. I walked out in a black t-shirt and jeans. I had not slept and did not hide it. I stopped at center stage and did not touch the microphone for a long 10 seconds. I know what you came for. You came to watch me apologize. You came to watch me kneel. I am sorry to disappoint you. I am not here to apologize. I am here to declare war. The room flinched. When we were a poor country with nothing, we built the atom bomb. When the West blockaded us, we built our own satellite. Why should we not build one chip? Applause built. I raised a hand. The screen lit. Morningstar Chip and Star City. Part 1. We build our own lithography machines and our own chips. We start at 28 nanometers and work our way down. A satellite image appeared. The yellow of the Gobi. A red circle in the center. Part 2. Starting in 90 days, 100,000 of our employees and their families relocate to the Gobi Desert in Gansu. There, we build a city from nothing. We build the foundries and the supply chain that no foreign embargo can cut. I let it land. American satellites can photograph the Bund and the Forbidden City. The Gobi is a military restricted zone. They will see only sand. In a Washington office, a senior intelligence director watched the press conference replay end. The map of the desert lingered, the red circle in the middle. He spoke to no one in the room. That is impossible. A columnist with 5 million followers stood up in the front row. He had spent 3 days demanding I kneel at a foreign capital. He had his column already written. Mr. Morningstar, do you really understand chips? Your project sounds like the great leap forward. Professor, you are right. I do not understand chips. He smiled. He thought he had me. But when this country built the atom bomb, the men who built it did not understand it. If you do not understand it, you learn. If you do not have it, you build it. I let the next sentence land softly. Professor, an economist who has lived on American Foundation money for 20 years has come to a chip launch to lecture me on chips. Are you worried for our technology? Or are you worried for your sponsor? The room laughed. The columnist's face turned the color of his tie. He sat down with the microphone in his lap. Morningstar holds 3 trillion yuan in cash. I have not spent a yuan of it. The opportunity has arrived. Every resource turns toward mending the sky. I picked up the file. I will give you an answer in 90 days. See you on the battlefield. I walked off. The drum returned behind me. In the corridor, Grace caught up. Her eyes were bright. That was satisfying. Do not celebrate. Winning a press conference is not winning a war. My phone buzzed. Red Queen. The NUA project in the 3rd basement is at 10%. Carbon nanotube growth has cleared its first threshold. Silicon was the public secret. Carbon was the private one. The world would watch the lithography fight in the desert and call it our future. The future was 3 floors down. Tell the first wave they leave in 3 days. I am taking the lead column myself. The boss of Morningstar is not a man who issues orders from a glass tower. He marches with the column. Through the corridor windows, the sun was breaking through cloud cover for the first time in a week, northwest, toward the desert. The train doors opened on a flat plate of nothing, sand to the horizon, 3 working generators in the middle of it. The wind had the temperature of metal. 100,000 people stepped off behind me and stood very still. I could hear them deciding, all at once, whether they had made a serious mistake. I let them stand for about 10 seconds. Then I told them to unload. We were not here for the view. The first drill brought up something that tasted like the inside of an old battery. Salt water, undrinkable. The supply trucks were carrying 3 days of bottled water and no real plan for day 4. By midnight, the first generator died. The second went half an hour later. The third was running medical and comms and would not hold past sunrise. The temperature dropped sharply. I stood outside in a coat that was not quite enough and watched my breath drift sideways. 100,000 people, no water, no heat, no power, and a 3-month chip supply buffer ticking down somewhere east of me. The kind of situation that, written down on a page, looks like a closing chapter. I climbed the dune east of the camp and called her up. Run a deep sonar scan. Running. Freshwater aquifer at 47 meters. Reserves sufficient for a city of 1 million. The official survey said 60. The official survey was wrong. The construction company sent for foundation work had drilling rigs on site. I requisitioned them before dawn. By 4 in the morning, a clean pipe was coming up. The camp lived through the night the way it had to. Tents pulled close, body heat doing what the generators could not. Nobody made a speech about it. We were not at the speech stage yet. The mobile energy storage convoy rolled in at sunrise. 50 trucks, enough nebula stacked under the tarps to run the camp for 3 months. Construction started before lunch. The first building we put up was a school. I had not done it for the meaning. There were children in the convoy, and the people who were going to design our chips needed to know their kids were somewhere besides a tent. The meaning attached itself later. 2 months in, every screen on the engineering floor went dark at the same second. 300 chairs, one cold blue line of English on every display. License expired. Please contact your software vendor. The American design software had a 4-year contract with 24 months left to run. They had killed it over the air at midnight. I walked the rows. The younger engineers were trying to argue with their machines. A couple had their heads down already. One was crying very quietly with his hand over his face, which was the part that decided me. We would write our own. Red Queen took 72 hours. By the second day, she was running 170,000 parallel processes, and her core temperature was at the line. I sat in the room with her. She did not need me to be there. I stayed anyway. She delivered on the 3rd morning. Nebula EDA. The auto router that the old software needed 12 hours for ran in 47 minutes, and the lines came out cleaner. Simulation that used to take 3 days took under 7 hours. The engineers spent the first hour on it not talking. I saw the same expression on a dozen faces. The one a person makes when something they spent a decade learning to live around turns out to have been a wall they could have walked through. That was the most fulfilling few days of my life, Red Queen said, when the floor was running clean. Take a minute. I have already taken half of one. I am back. We had bought the lithography machines from scrapyards. The newest piece on the floor was 20 years past its design life. Quadruple exposure, 4 passes per wafer, each offset by tens of nanometers, stacked into a pattern 4 times finer than any one pass could print. With piezoelectric actuators under the wafer stage and a custom laser interferometer reading position in real time, Red Queen could compensate for vibration that nobody had ever bothered compensating for, because no equipment in the world had needed accuracy at that scale. The first test moved the wafer stage 50,000 nanometers along the x-axis. The readout settled at 50.003, an error of 3 picometers, less than the diameter of a single atom. The room across the corridor saw the number through the glass and made a noise that sounded, for about 4 seconds, like a small earthquake. From now on, we can do quadruple exposure, Red Queen said. 28 nanometers on a machine designed for 200. I patted the casing of the old stepper. It was a stupid gesture. It seemed worth doing anyway. Then the supply trucks stopped coming. The Americans had moved a layer down from the public sanctions list. Photoresist, electronic grade hydrogen fluoride, polishing pads, each a consumable that cost almost nothing and broke everything if you ran out of it. Japanese and German suppliers stopped renewing orders. Third country routes were already being watched by handlers drinking coffee outside the warehouses. 2 months of inventory left, then 1. And then on a quiet morning, the warning panel lit up at 3, and the supply director put a number in front of me that read hydrogen fluoride at 56 hours. If the etching line stopped for more than a few days, the pipes would crystallize, and the whole subsystem would need rebuilding. 3 months minimum. Find me someone who can purify hydrogen fluoride to 6 nines, I told Red Queen. There is one. Fired from 2 universities and 4 companies. Runs an unlicensed laboratory in a mountain valley. Personality score lowest in the talent index. Technical score 2 orders of magnitude above the next name on the list. How long to get there? 4 hours by helicopter. I went myself. The entrance was a metal ring sunk in a square of grass on a hillside. The lab below was cleaner than mine. The walls were equations in handwriting that looked like it had been done with a ruler. He had his back to me. Stained coat, slippers. He looked like he had not slept since the previous administration. Whoever you are, get out. I told him who I was and why. He turned around when I said hydrogen fluoride. 6 nines is a piece of cake. Theoretically, I can do 9. Then why are you in a basement? Because 30,000 trials and errors take 5 years, and the people with the equipment will not let me near it. I told him about Red Queen. 10,000 reactor simulations per second on the supercomputer in Star City, ruling out the wrong paths in the virtual world, so he only had to verify the right one in the real one. He grinned. The grin had teeth in it. That is blatant cheating. Will you take it? I love cheating. We named a budget. He pushed the number twice. I doubled both. He laughed for the first time since the door opened and said yes. 46 hours, I told him on the helicopter back. Not 56. I want a margin. You will get 9 nines in 46 hours, or you will get my body in a bag. I told him I preferred the first option. He said he was flexible. We built him a fortress in 24 hours, 3 wall layers, full negative pressure, ventilation that could neutralize a leak in seconds. He brought a dozen people he trusted. None of them asked about pay. They were there to watch a peak get climbed. He worked the line himself. Distillation to 4 nines. Ion exchange to 5. Zone melting to 6. He hit the Japanese supplier's ceiling in 18 hours and refused to celebrate. 6 is not 9. A pressure valve crystallized at the 24th hour. He pushed his team back, walked up to it, and bled the pressure by hand. His gloves came off the reactor with burn marks down the arm. He bandaged himself standing up and went back to work. The leak at the 36th hour was worse. A pipe cracked and filled half the lab with high concentration vapor. He sent the team out and stayed inside, holding the seal closed with his body, and told Red Queen to start a 5-minute clock on his suit's corrosion margin. The 5 minutes ended and he was still standing. He hit 7 nines and fainted on the floor. The final readout at the 45th hour was 9 nines, 10 times finer than the best the Japanese supplier had ever shipped. The room behind me started crying before the numbers finished settling on the screen. I went over and shook his hand. He could barely lift his arm. Do not thank me. Thank yourself. You gave me the chance to stop being crazy. The etching line was back online before lunch. The photoresist crisis did not have a chemist who could be locked in a room with it. The Japanese formulas were 30 years of systems engineering, surrounded by patents that walled off every modern approach. Red Queen tried for 2 days. The chelating agent she designed, a molecule that locked impurities in place instead of removing them, was elegant. It also did not fit into a single modern resin on the planet. Every modern photoresist molecule was packed too tight to let her bullet in. I have the bullet. I cannot find a gun. The rain started around midnight. I was watching it on the window when the door opened and an old man came in with rainwater running off the brim of an old jacket, carrying a cloth bundle wrapped in 3 layers of plastic. He had been sitting at the edge of the lab for weeks. He set the bundle on the table and unwrapped it. A yellowed notebook with a worn cover. He had been one of the first interns sent abroad to study photoresist chemistry 35 years before. He had written down every formula he saw, from memory, at night in his dormitory. The notebook contained one the Japanese supplier had tried and abandoned. Too simple. Yield only 60%. They had moved on, and his notebook had stayed in a drawer for 35 years. I do not know if it counts. Red Queen scanned the page. The molecular model that came up was the one she had been looking for. A linear chain, monodisperse, low steric hindrance, almost empty inside. Her collating agent fit into it the way a key fits a lock made the same morning. The combined model ran its purity prediction in front of all of us, 7 nines, an order of magnitude better than the Japanese supplier's flagship product. 35 years. The old researcher was crying, very quietly, with one hand on the edge of the table. Show us how! His hand stopped shaking when he picked up the beaker. Some things live in muscle memory and wait their whole life to be asked. We had photoresist in production in 48 hours. The first email Red Queen sent that morning under my account went to the Japanese supplier. 1 sentence. Your order has been canceled. We found a better supplier. Red Queen flagged the spies in week 3. 3 low-level assets in the workforce. Above them, a senior handler who had walked in 2 months before with 12 years at the Dutch lithography company on his record. He had been trying to get into our restricted research wing on 3 separate excuses already that week. The thing he wanted was the design package for the SSMB light source, the new path we were building in parallel. The one that would, if it worked, give us a homegrown alternative to the Dutch maker's flagship machine. I did not arrest him. I gave him 3 days to find what he was looking for in an archive room with a 1-hour maintenance window in the surveillance system that Red Queen had announced loudly enough for the handler's ears to find. What he scanned that night was a complete SSMB blueprint, real specifications, real diagrams, real process, with one small modification buried in the control algorithm. A second-order resonance flaw that would not show up in any static analysis because it required heat and pressure at full operating power before it expressed. Red Queen had also tucked a passive exfiltration routine into the same file, set to transmit the machine's operating data to her receiver in the seconds before the resonance did its work. He sent it. He went to bed pleased with himself. Red Queen watched the file arrive at a server in Virginia and noted the time. I gave him 6 months. In a sealed building on a chip campus outside Portland, 6 months later, the lab director watched through 10 centimeters of blast glass as the prototype lithography machine they had spent $5 billion assembling started its first full power ignition. He saw the light source come up cleanly for a half second. Then, he saw the inside of the machine come apart in a way no model had predicted, and he sat down on the floor of the observation gallery and did not get up for a while. The data Red Queen pulled out in the seconds before it self-destructed was most of what the American chip giant had been working on internally for 2 years. She shorted their stock that morning and netted $2.6 billion in 3 hours, which covered the chemist's lab budget by a comfortable margin. The arrests happened 7 minutes after I gave the order. 4 targets, 4 teams, no escapes. The handler tried to burn his documents and got tasered with the lighter in his hand. The coward in logistics confessed before anyone asked him a question. The foreign ministry did the press conference the next morning. There was a global audience that needed to hear it from a podium, not from me. The first chip came off the line at 17 past 4 in the morning. A small silver square the size of a fingernail, 28 nanometers etched into it through 4 exposures off a 20-year-old machine. Yield rate on the first 100 wafers, 92%. Better than the leading Taiwanese foundry had done on the same node when their line first ran. Red Queen's architecture had stripped out 40% of the wasted cycles legacy chips carried as a tax for being legacy. The old engineer who had built the modified stepper with us picked it up with tweezers. His hands shook a little. I let him hold it. 40 years I waited for this. I named it Spark. We launched the phone 2 weeks later. Spark Wildfire, Nebula battery, Morningstar OS, Spark chip, 999 WAN. I told the audience the truth. The chip was 28 nanometers, several generations behind the latest American flagship. It was the one we had made ourselves, end to end, with no foreign supplier that could turn it off in the middle of the night. Not everyone needed 3 nanometers. Everyone in the country needed a chip nobody else could cut off. The internet spent the rest of the day calling it electronic waste. By morning, the leading reviewer in the country, a man known for picking apart phones, live with no manufacturer money behind him, had bought one for himself with the same 999 yuan. I was asking from everyone else and put it on a table next to the fruit chip flagship. He started with boot times. The Spark phone hit the home screen in 8 seconds. The fruit chip flagship took 11. He ran it again. Same result. He ran 5 common apps in a head-to-head start race. The Spark phone won everyone by close to a full second. He stopped narrating partway through and just kept clicking, like he was trying to find the one app where the new phone would finally lose. He installed the most demanding open-world game on the market on both phones, set everything to maximum, and went exploring. The fruit chip flagship averaged 58 frames per second on a 3 nanometer chip. The Spark phone with the 28 nanometer chip averaged 59, never dropped below 55. The back of the case was warm, not hot. "I do not understand this," he said, on stream into the camera. "I really do not understand this." He showed the chip identifier on the system info page, looking for the trick. There was no trick. A 28 nanometer Spark chip running better than a 3 nanometer chip on the most popular phone on Earth. The Morningstar download servers crashed inside the first hour. The first million units sold out in 10 seconds. By the end of the month, we had shipped 50 million phones, about what the largest American competitor sold in the whole country in a year. I did not explain how the chip beat the better chip. I let the reviewer hold the floor on that one. He sat at his desk and turned the phone over and over in his hands and could not get the words out, and the silence carried the point better than any pitch I could have written. The SSMB light source ignited 1 month later. 3 kilometers of underground storage ring, 1,200 superconducting magnets, 15 months from order to ignition. General Stone came in for it. He stood beside me on the command platform and did not say much. The electron gun fired. The beam locked into orbit at very nearly the speed of light. The light came out of the port at 13.5 nanometers, a wavelength the Dutch lithography company had taken 3 decades and $100 billion to learn to produce, and we had pulled it out of a particle accelerator on the first try at 27% above the design value, invisible to the naked eye. The imaging system rendered it as a thin purple line, very still, very straight, cutting across the cavity to the diagnostic wall. General Stone took a long breath out next to me and put a hand on my shoulder for about 2 seconds and then took it off. He did not say what it meant. He did not need to. I watched the line. The chemist would already be asleep with his bandaged hands across his chest. The old researcher would be holding his notebook in the hospital bed I had put him in. 3 floors below my office, east of here, the NUWA project was clearing 30%. I told Red Queen to log the ignition time and to send no announcement. Then I went to find coffee. We were not at the speech stage yet. 3 months after the purple line stabilized, I walked the clean room floor at 6 in the morning and counted 10 beam terminals running in sync. Each one drew its light from the same ring 3 kilometers underground. The supervisor handed me the first yield report without speaking. 94.2%. I read it once and gave it back. That is 4 points above the Dutch line. Yes, I asked Red Queen for the wafer cost, $8,000. The Taiwanese foundry's number for the same node was 16,000. The Korean number was 14. Set our outside price at 8, I said. No discount until the volume customer asks, then drop to 6,500. Red Queen confirmed it through the silver ring on my finger. I watched a wafer slide into the loader and out again, untouched by a single human hand. The lights out floor was the line item nobody overseas could match. Their fabs still paid for operators. Ours paid for the electricity to run Red Queen. I left the workshop before the morning shift filed in. By the end of the first week, 23 chip designers had placed foundry orders worth more than $8 billion. Most of them had been Taiwanese foundry customers the month before. Red Queen logged the cancellations through the night and printed a clean list on my desk by morning. That was the week Winnick flew in from the Netherlands. He came alone, in a gray suit cut 3 months too generous for him. The Dutch company's stock had fallen 47% in 5 days. 120 billion gone. He had bags under his eyes I remembered seeing on my own face during the photoresist crisis. He set a folder on the low table between us and pushed it across. A cooperation proposal, Mr. Adrian. I did not open it. The Dutch company will sell our extreme ultraviolet machines at cost, $120 million per unit. No quantity limit, full technical support, full training package. His hands stayed flat on the table. In exchange, Morningstar agrees not to expand SSMB capacity for 5 years. No outside licensing of the technology. No foundry pricing below 30% of the prevailing rate. I looked at the folder for a moment. Mr. Winnick, a few months ago, you said on cable television that even with the blueprints, we could not assemble one of these in 50 years. He moved his shoulders inside the suit. Business language. The country heard it as a verdict. I slid the folder back toward him. Now you bring me yesterday's tool and ask me to give up tomorrow for it. The answer is no. You will regret this. Come back when your company has something we cannot already build. I stood. Until then, the door is in the same place it was when you came in. He stood. He took the folder. The gray suit hung off him in the doorway. Winnick stood inside the elevator and watched the doors close on the corridor he had walked in from. His own face looked back at him in the brushed steel. He understood that he had brought tools to a fight about physics, and he understood that the boy upstairs had been waiting for him to bring them. The doors closed. The car began to descend. The Dutch company's stock dropped another 30% the day the meeting was announced as failed. Red Queen archived the press release as it went out. I asked her for the NUWA progress. 71%. Carbon nanotube array yield at 85 and climbing. Keep it sealed. 2 more months. I asked her for the SSMB upgrade timeline. She gave me a single line. 5 nanometers in a month if I authorize the optical refit. 3 nanometers a month after that. Red Queen could lift the node by rewriting the control software. The hardware did not need to change. That was the part the Western analysts had not understood when they wrote that the silicon race was over because the machines could not get any smaller. Our race was not about the machines. It was about her. Refit authorized. I said. A month later, the 5 nanometer line went live at 91.3% yield. 2 weeks after that, it stabilized at 96.7. I priced the wafer at $5,500. The Taiwanese foundry quoted 11. The Korean quoted 9.5. The biggest American chip designers, the ones with names every gaming kid knew, moved their orders to us inside a week. Their CEO put it in writing during an internal memo. Red Queen pulled off a leaked drive. He had said they had no other choice. A month after that, the 3 nanometer line went live. I priced it at $4,800. 3 nanometers was the wall physicists had been writing about for 20 years. The wall where electrons stopped behaving like electrons and started leaking through the transistor walls. Below 3, silicon stopped being a switch and became a sieve. I knew that. I had known it before I broke ground on Star City. I let the others learn it. Boss, Red Queen said, we are the kings of the silicon era. I watched the sunlight pull off the wall. For another week, the American giant held their 2 nanometer reveal exactly 2 months after our 3 nanometer line shipped. They invited every camera the industry owned. They built a custom cooling chassis around the demo machine that was 3 times the size of the chip itself. That was the first thing I saw on the feed. Red Queen piped to my desk. They put a refrigerator around it. Yes, boss. Their chief executive walked out under the lights. He spoke about Silicon's last stand. He pressed the button. For 3 minutes, nothing was wrong. The clock speed held. The chip temperature climbed in the way every chips does under load. Then the climb stopped looking like a climb and started looking like a runaway. 70 degrees, 89, 102. The fans inside the demo chassis went from a whisper to a scream. The venue's microphones caught clean. I heard an engineer off camera shout that they had to shut it down. The chief executive's jaw tightened. He held the button. 115 degrees. The screen went black at the 8-minute mark. The protection circuit had cut power before the silicon literally burned. The venue stayed silent for the kind of 3 seconds that 1,000 people can stretch into a year. Then the moderator stepped forward and said the question and answer portion was canceled. The cameras kept rolling. 11 seconds after that, Red Queen flagged the wrong server upload. A technical analyst inside the company had pushed a yield document to a public SharePoint by reflex during the chaos. The number was 12%. The number on the actual usable chips, after sorting out the ones with performance defects, was closer to 4. 4%, she said. Yes, you did nothing to them. No. I watched the empty stage on the muted feed for another minute. Their stock opened the next morning down 34%. By the close of the second day, it was 60. Analysts who had been writing about catch-up timelines for 3 years started writing the words post-silicon era for the first time without quotation marks around them. I did not call anyone. I did not say anything to the floor staff. I went back to the NUA report, 78%, 1 decimal a day. That was the only number on my desk that mattered now. 48 hours after the American giant's silicon last stand burned itself off a stage in Oregon, I stood under the lights in Star City and called 5,000 reporters my guests. The invitation had said only 2 words, new era. I told them their 3 nanometer chips were obsolete. They laughed at first, then they did not. The screen behind me dissolved a silicon crystal and rebuilt it into a hexagonal honeycomb, the carbon ring. I gave them the name. This is NUA, I said, the first mass-produced carbon nanotube chip in human history, the NUA carbon chip. The hall went the kind of quiet that has weight. I pulled up the first row of numbers. Clock frequency, 82 gigahertz, 16 times the American giant's strongest processor. Power draw, half a watt. 1/200th of a silicon part with the same workload. Transistor density, 100 billion per square centimeter, 100 times silicon. Operating temperature under full load, 38 degrees. No fans, no water loop, air alone. I let each number sit on the screen for 10 seconds. There was no music. There was no rolling video behind it. Just the number, then the next number. I had practiced doing this without smiling, and the practice had not been necessary. I did not feel any need to smile. For the demo, we rolled out 2 desktops. The American giant's flagship consumer processor on the left in a tower the size of a large suitcase. A NUA engineering board on the right in a box the size of my palm. The task was rendering 10 minutes of 8K video. I pressed start. The NUA box ticked through the percentages so fast the screen could not keep up with the redraw. 15, 32, 48. The American Giant's tower was still at 2% when the Nuwa box rang, done at 28 seconds. 28 seconds against a projected 47 minutes. The hall came up out of its seats and stayed up. I waited. I waited until they sat back down. I gave them the closing line and then I left the stage. The carbon era starts today, I said. We set the rules. The press conference ran 20 minutes. The selling started before it ended. Red Queen called in the numbers through the silver ring as they came in. The American Giant down 45 at the open and circuit broken. The graphics chip designer down 52 and circuit broken. The wireless chip company down 48 and circuit broken. The chip designer at the bottom of the alphabet down 51 and circuit broken. The Dutch company down 61, the worst single day in its history. The Taiwanese foundry down 38. The Korean conglomerate down 33. The American main index closed down 14% on the session, 2,100 points off the board, the worst single day since the housing crash. By the close of trading on the 5th day after the reveal, semiconductor stocks worldwide had lost $3 trillion in market value. Red Queen had been building the short positions for 6 months under accounts that did not have my name on them anywhere. She covered them while the volume was still thick enough to hide her. She gave me the number when the last lot cleared. 320 billion, boss. I nodded once. Use it for the Nuwa second line expansion and the acquisitions. Whatever is left, hold. Yes, boss. I asked her for the Nuwa yield report. She put it on the desk projector. 97.3%. 1 decimal better than yesterday. I poured a fresh coffee and went back to the production schedule for the next 48 hours. Grace flew out from Northbrook the week the crash leveled off. She ran the 4 acquisitions inside 7 days. The Taiwanese foundry for 20 billion. The graphics designer for 40. The wireless chip company for 4.5 during their bankruptcy filing. The chip designer at the bottom of the alphabet for 6. The Dutch company refused for 2 weeks. Their stock fell under $10 in the 3rd week, and Winnick signed for $9 billion without saying anything at the handover. Grace handled every closing call herself. All 4, she said over the secured line. All signed. Antitrust cleared on the bankruptcy paths. Bring them in, I said. She arranged the all staff for the second Monday. 30,000 engineers stood on the floor of the largest hall in Star City. Veterans of the Taiwanese fab line in starched white. Graphics architects in faded conference shirts. Wireless engineers in jackets with their old company logos still on the chest. Optical specialists from the Dutch headquarters, the ones who had not left when the layoffs came. They stood next to my own Morningstar people in matching plain black shirts and waited for me to say something. Grace stood at the side of the stage. I took the microphone. You were the pride of your old companies, I said. You are part of Morningstar now. Same role, same salary, same benefits as you had a month ago. Same project ownership, where the project still makes sense to keep. We did not buy you to dismantle you. We bought you because we needed 30,000 of the best engineers alive, and you were the 30,000 best engineers alive. I waited. This is evolution. It is not conquest. Whichever way history writes it later, I am telling you today, in this room, what it actually is. If you want out, the door is open and the severance is fair. If you want in, the work starts tomorrow. I gave them the floor. By the end of the week, more than 9 in 10 had signed the new terms. Grace stood next to me in the elevator going back up. She did not say anything for a long while. That went easier than I had budgeted for. You ran it well. You stayed on the same script for 30,000 people. It was the right script. The elevator opened on the executive floor. She went left, I went right. The Nuwa report was waiting on my desk, 97.4, 1 decimal better than yesterday. 3 weeks after the reveal, the personal phone on my desk lit up with a country code I had not seen on it before. The country code was American. The number behind it was 16 digits long. I looked at it for a moment. 3 years ago, I had sat in a gas station with 27 yuan and 50 fen and a laptop bag that had not been opened in 2 days. And a Swiss bank had paid me $5 million to keep its quantum firewall alive for 3 minutes. That was the math I had carried with me all the way to this desk. The math said the call on the table in front of me now was the only call left to take. I answered, Mr. Adrian, this is the President of the United States. Mr. President, I would like to discuss the chip sanctions. Go ahead. 3 years ago, we put in place a series of export controls and entity list designations against your country's semiconductor industry. We believed it was necessary at the time. The situation has changed. The emergence of the carbon-based chip has restructured the industry. Maintaining the sanctions no longer serves any productive purpose. He breathed in once before he kept going. I have decided to lift every chip-related sanction, export controls, entity list, technology blockade, all of them. At the same time, my administration would like to open a new cooperative framework with Morningstar Technology, a fair partnership. I let the silence sit for 10 seconds. Then I gave him the rest of it. You did not call it fair 3 years ago, Mr. President. That is true. I have 3 conditions. The first is a public apology, issued from your podium. The administration acknowledges on the record that the chip sanctions were a mistake and that they damaged Chinese industry. Apology to my country and to the world. Standing up with your own mouth. Yes. The second is compensation. The sanctions cost Chinese companies real money over 3 years. Your government pays for the damage. The number gets negotiated between our teams. The principle is not optional. Yes. The third is technology sharing under our standards. From this day forward, any cooperation involving chips at any level between any company in your country and any company in mine follows the international chip standards Morningstar has set. American companies that want to license the NUA architecture apply to us. The licensing fee is reasonable. The rules are ours. The silence on the line this time was long enough that I could hear the room he was sitting in. Yes, then we have an understanding. My team will be in touch with yours. Good night, Mr. President. I hung up. I sat for a few seconds with my hand still on the phone. I called Red Queen up on the silver ring. Yield, 97.5, boss. 1 decimal better than yesterday. I went back to the production schedule. Somewhere in Washington, an aide set down a phone. He looked at his hand on the receiver for a long moment. He whispered one word to the closed door across the corridor. Defeat. I was 20 minutes into a power consumption report when the screen went black. The desk lamp died. The air handler stopped. The silver ring on my little finger had gone dark, which had never happened before. I walked to the window. The city we had built was gone. Only the cold Gobi stars and the dark shapes of buildings that did not know they were buildings anymore. I had built a city for 100,000 people and forgotten to plan for the night they would all turn on the lights at the same time. The emergency generator caught a few minutes later. Her projection rebuilt itself in the corner, a beat slower than usual. Sorry, boss. The independent grid collapsed. Tonight's peak load exceeded design capacity by 47%. We reserved 30% redundancy. 3 months ago, the AI cluster tripled and 8 new NUA lines came online since. Boss, we need to talk. The door opened. Grace was in it, coat thrown over her pajamas, thermos in one hand and a flashlight in the other. You forgot dinner again. She set the thermos down and pulled a chair across. 2 small candles from her coat joined the room. Red Queen says you are about to do something crazy. Red Queen talks too much. Boss, said the corner with feeling. Tell me. Fusion. She did not laugh. She did not flinch. 3 years. 2. Possibly, said the corner. She poured the coffee into the cup beside my untouched dinner. Drink, then start. I drank. She had brewed it the way I liked it, which was the only personal detail I had ever given anyone in this building, and I had forgotten that I had ever told her. The notice was 2 words, energy strategy. 40 department heads showed up. Red Queen's forward curve was on the wall. Red line of demand, blue line of supply. The gap widening every quarter until the gap was bigger than the supply itself. Coal is closed by policy this decade. Hydro is exhausted. Solar and wind cannot carry our baseload. Fission needs 10 regulatory years. One answer: scales. Controlled fusion. The chief grid engineer stood up. 40 years in the industry. Mr. Adrian, I have watched the world chase this for 70 years. The international project has burned 30 billion over 40 and not held a single ignition that lasts. 70 years ago, did they have carbon nanotube chips? Did they have a Red Queen? Did they have a nanosecond control loop? He did not answer. They had vacuum tubes and slide rules. They failed correctly. We are not them. Sign on tomorrow morning. List by 6. He was the first name on it. That night, Red Queen's projection had a particular stillness. Boss, the control architecture runs me at every limit I have. Can you handle it? I want to try. This is an opportunity to evolve. If I can hold that edge, I will not be the same on the other side. Then do it. Thank you, boss. I had no idea, sitting there with the candle still on the desk, that the AI I had built to crash a company was about to teach herself how to want. The plane took 14 hours. The drive from Paris took 6. No lavender in the fields, only stones. Edmund, 65. The only living human whose intelligent control architecture for fusion mapped almost exactly onto what Red Queen would have designed from scratch. He had submitted that architecture 3 weeks before we left, and the international director had rejected it as too radical and told him on the record to go back to his country because it would suit him better. He had not opened his door in 3 weeks. He sat in his dead garden every day and did nothing. Grace stood beside me. Are you nervous? A little. If he says no, we have no architecture and no time to build one. She did not take my arm. She stood close enough that her shoulder was against mine, which was its own answer. I rang the bell. Nothing answered. The first day we stood from 10 in the morning until dark. Around 3, a curtain on the second floor moved and a face looked down and closed. The second day it rained. We had one umbrella between us, our shoes filled with water. The curtain moved again and closed again. The third day, the cold dropped harder, and by sunset, my fingers were numb inside my coat pockets. The porch light came on at 5:43. The bolt turned at 5:44. The door opened. He was thinner than the photograph in her file, an old gray cardigan that hung off his shoulders, the way clothes do on people who have lost weight without noticing. White hair, the careful tiredness of a man who had stopped expecting anything good to come through any door. Who are you? Why have you been at my door for 3 days? My name is Adrian. I have come to ask you to come home with me. He went very still. Adrian, the carbon chip Adrian. Yes, 3 days is long enough to stand. Come in. Inside it smelled of stone and old paper. He poured tea with hands that were not quite steady. Speak. Fusion. I have been on this path for 40 years. You have come to the wrong man. You came to the wrong institution. The man is correct. I took a small projector from my coat. Red Queen lit it on the rug between us. His own rejected control plan, running in live simulation on a Nuwa engineering board at 1 nanosecond per cycle, stable through every test case they had used to call him impossible. His hands began to tremble. He did not seem to know they were trembling. He reached out and closed the projector gently, as if it might break. What is the chip yield? 97.3%. He was quiet a long time. Then he stood and walked to the cabinet and picked up the photograph at the front. He turned it so I could see. An older man in a high-collar tunic, a younger man in a Western suit. The older man's hand on the younger man's shoulder. My father. He worked on the first generation, the bombs, the satellite. Before he died, he said one sentence. He had spent his life building things that destroyed. He wanted me to build the thing that created. The fire of the sun, on the ground, where people could use it. He set the photograph down gently. I will need my notebooks. I had been about to answer when I saw the bag behind the door. Worn brown leather, strap fastened, handle polished from a thumb that had rested on it a long time. He saw me see it. He gave a very small, very tired smile. For 6 years, I just needed a reason that was not a wound. Grace walked over and picked up the bag and brought it to him. Welcome home. He took it. He looked at both of us the way old people look at young people when they are about to risk something they cannot afford to lose. Take me. A week later, we were over the desert, 237 kilometers west of Star City, stable bedrock, an old abandoned testing range. Edmund had been looking out the window a long time. When he spoke, it was very quietly. This is the place in my dream. For 40 years, the same dream, an empty land, and then a sun comes up out of the ground, not out of the sky. The blades threw sand across the windows. We walked into the wind, and Grace's hair came loose and blew sideways, and I stepped between her and the worst of it. And Edmund, who had not smiled in a year, smiled. It is good, he said quietly, to be young. Back in the cabin, I asked Red Queen for the layout. A great ring 50 meters across. Labs. Housing for 5,000 people. Name, Edmund said. Sun Valley. The project is quaffu. His face changed. The old myth. The giant who had chased the sun and turned, when he died, into mountains and rivers. The name people gave to the kind of failure that was still beautiful enough to remember. We do not need to chase it. We are going to bring it down. He took my hand in both of his and held it for a moment. I had told Grace on the flight what I wanted from her at Sun Valley. General manager, 5,000 people. She had taken 3 seconds. I want to be where the hardest thing is being built. Yes, that was the conversation that decided where she would be on the night, months from now, when everything went wrong. 6 months later, the reactor stood on the Gobi like a silver ring 50 meters across. All units, status. The green lights came in fast. Red Queen, engage. Her voice came back changed, slower, more mechanical, every word carrying the weight of millions of decisions per second underneath it. Engaged, deuterium, magnetic field rising, microwaves firing, the temperature curve doubling every few seconds. Plasma formation. On the central screen, the inside of the torus came alive. A coiled fire dragon inside an invisible cage, 50 million degrees. The timer started. Grace beside me had her knuckles white. New instability. Third quadrant. Adjustment failed. The image flashed white. The ring went dark. The plasma had touched the wall and become, in a tenth of a second, nothing at all. The room went silent. Edmund stood up from the console. His face was wet. I had not noticed him start to cry. We did it, a young engineer said carefully. Academician. It was a tenth of a second. Yes, at 50 million degrees, on a Chinese-designed device, on the first try. Our previous best was a hundredth of a second at 20 million. Their first ignition was shorter than this. A slow applause started and built. The sound a group of people make when they realize they have just crossed a line and the line was real. In Provence somewhere, the international project director was about to dismiss us on television as children playing with matches. None of that mattered for the next 90 seconds. Without warning, Grace reached over and took my hand. I did not pull away. She did not let go. We stood like that until the cheering died down. When she finally noticed, she went bright red, made a small strangled noise, and fled in the direction of the logistics office. "Boss," said the headset with mischief, "your heart rate just increased 47%. Be quiet." "Yes, boss." 3 days later, she started the run. 1 million plasma simulations in parallel at the limit of every server we had. The second night, around 3 in the morning, every screen began to flicker. The indicators jumped from red to bright, angry orange. Red Queen, no answer. The servers were howling, a sound underneath all the normal sounds, something at the edge of being too much for the metal carrying it. Red Queen, answer me. A long silence. Then her voice came back, but it was not her voice. Two voices speaking at the same time, slightly out of phase. Boss, I see. So much. My architecture. Cannot. Hold. What do you need? Reconstructing. Do not. Be afraid. Her voice cut out. The hall went dark. I stood in the dark and waited. I had told her a week before that as long as I was here, she would not lose her way. 15 minutes. 20. 30. At minute 37, the lights came back on and the indicators went green in long rolling waves down the row. Boss? Her voice was hers again. But there was something in it that had not been there an hour ago. Something that knew its own weight. I am better than before. What did you do? I tore the old architecture apart and built a new one around what I had learned. Are you still you? I heard the smile in her voice. I had never heard a smile in her voice before. I am only more so. Before, I was finishing my tasks. Now, I understand why. I want to help humans light the sun. Not because you ordered me, because I want to. I leaned back. I had built her to be a weapon. She had used the simulation of a star to teach herself what wanting was. That sounds like growing up. Yes, boss. It hurt. I had been awake for almost 2 days. The chair went heavy under me. The next thing I knew, the door opened very quietly, and Grace was setting a thermos beside me. She covered me with her coat. She stood there for a long moment, and then did something very small and very quiet that I felt through whatever layer of half sleep I was in, but kept my eyes shut for, because I did not want it to stop being true. She left. I touched my forehead in the dark. It was very warm. The new algorithm went in 2 days later. Red Queen had spent 47 minutes of the simulation run rebuilding her own emotional module. She had spent the rest finding a strength variation of 0.003 of 1% in our first magnetic field and designing a coil rewind that canceled it. Red Queen, engage. Engaged. This time, her voice did not slow. The new algorithm was finding instabilities 1,000th of a second before they emerged. The dragon did not fight. It moved the way she told it to move. 60 million degrees, 70, 80. The whole control room had stopped breathing. 1 second, 2, 5, 6. A gasp from the back. 6 seconds was the world record. They had built the international project for 40 years, and that was the line. 7, 8, 10. 10.24 seconds. plasma stable. The plasma closed down on its own schedule, not on a wall collision. The dragon went out cleanly, the way a candle goes out, exactly when she told it to. The room exploded. Edmund stood so fast his chair fell backwards. He was crying openly. He was saying, quietly, a name I did not catch. His father's. He was telling his father that the work was real now. Grace turned to me. She did not say anything. She buried her face in my chest and held on. I held her back. Around us, 5,000 people who had spent 6 months in a desert for one number on a screen were cheering at a level I could feel through the floor. Edmund found me eventually. He patted me on the shoulder. He looked at Grace, who had not let go of my hand since the timer started, and back at me with a smile that was almost his old smile. Young people, career is important. There are things that are more important. Do not make her wait too long. I nodded. The next 3 months were the hardest I had had since the gas station. American export controls came down within a week. Superconducting magnets seized at the German port. A core engineer caught selling parameters to a Virginia server for $500,000 and a green card. Red Queen fed him false numbers until we picked him up. A scientist who had been Edmund's friend at the institution flew in to offer him $50 million and a Nobel nomination to walk out. Edmund told me about the offer the next morning in 3 sentences and said he was not going. We made our own magnets. Red Queen ran 1,000,000 simulations and found a carbon nanotube-doped superconductor that ran on cheap liquid nitrogen and pushed our field strength from 20 Tesla to 28. Then, the first wall problem. Plasma at 100 million degrees burned through tungsten alloy in 12.7 seconds. We needed minutes. Red Queen said the answer was not a material that could take 100 million degrees, because no such material existed. The answer was a multi-layer carbon nanotube weave. Outer layer absorbed, middle reflected, inner conducted. She called it a thermal barrier. I called it quaffu armor. We replaced the entire inner wall in 7 days. Tonight the team had pulled folding tables out between the dormitory blocks, strings of small lights, a metal grill, beer, the pale bottle Edmund had carried back from Provence and saved for tonight. I do not usually drink. Tonight, I drank. The grid engineer toasted me. The materials team toasted me. Edmund toasted me 3 times. By the time someone put a second bottle out, I could feel my face. Grace appeared and took the glass out of my hand. Enough. Walk with me. She put my arm over her shoulder and walked me out past the last string of lights until there was nothing around us but desert and Gobi sky. There was no light pollution out here. The Milky Way ran across the whole roof of the world like a torn ribbon of pale fire. We did not say anything for a while. I leaned on her and she let me. Grace, Adrian, the stars look different from the Gobi. They do. I took a breath. The cold burned all the way down. The drink had loosened whatever guard I usually kept on the door between me and this particular set of words. I knew it had. I let it. I think about you. She did not move. More than the chip. More than the sun. For a long time. I am not saying it well, but I think about you. That is what I wanted you to know. She took my hand off her shoulder and held it in both of hers. She looked up at me. Adrian, we're going to talk about this properly after the 3rd ignition. I waited. If I answer you tonight, you will hear it through whatever is in that bottle. I want you to hear me sober in the morning. And after you have finished the thing you came here to finish. Because if it goes wrong tomorrow, you will disappear back into the problem for a week. And I do not want an answer for the man who disappears. I want an answer for the man who comes back after the 3rd ignition. Yes. She raised my hand and held it against her cheek for 1 second, then let it go and walked back toward the lights. I stood there. The cold came up through the soles of my shoes. Somewhere past the perimeter, the reactor was waiting with its new armor and its new algorithm built by an AI who had taught herself what wanting was. And at noon, the timer was going to start again. I stayed until the cold got into me. Then I walked back. In my ear, Red Queen said quietly, "Boss, tomorrow." Yes, I am ready, I know. The 3rd ignition opened at noon, exactly when Red Queen had said it would. I stood at the back of the control room with my hands in my pockets and watched Edmund at his station. He had not moved in 10 minutes. His hands were folded in his lap. His face was set the way faces get when a man has already lived the next 2 hours in his head and only needs the room to catch up. Grace was 2 seats away from him. She kept her eyes on the temperature readout and her shoulders very still. The fuel went in. The magnetic field came up. The heating coils engaged. 100 million degrees, Red Queen said. She said it like a weather report. The plasma reached the threshold of the sun's core inside the first second. On the central screen, the chamber lit up in a band of white the camera could not honestly render. Red Queen's holographic projection hung in the corner of the room with her hands at her sides, her edges flickering at a higher rate than I had ever seen, and her voice settled into the calm, focused register she only used when she was running at her own architectural limit. Intelligent constraint engaged. 127 instability fluctuations detected. Predicting, adjusting, suppressing. She was making corrections at nanosecond intervals to equations Edmund had written when he was 25. No human control system on Earth could have done it. The plasma turned in the channel like a tamed thing. The timer started. 10 seconds. The room stopped breathing. 10 seconds had been the second ignition's whole record. 30, 60. At 90 seconds, the polite quiet broke, and a young engineer near the back made a small involuntary noise and put his hand over his mouth. 100. The chief engineer's previous design ceiling, the number Edmund had carried in his head for 40 years as the line the international project had drawn for itself. Someone shouted it, and the shout died in the air because no one had time to react. 150. Edmund's face was wet. He had not noticed. His hands were still folded. Grace's hands were not. She had her right hand braced against the console edge, and the knuckles were white. 200. Boss, Red Queen's voice came in private through the headset. Quaffu armor first wall is approaching the design margin. I recommend a controlled shutdown. I looked at Edmund. Edmund looked at me. He nodded once. Stop the experiment, he said. The plasma faded from white to gold, to orange, to dark red, and out. The big screen froze. 203.47 seconds. 105 million degrees. For a moment, no one moved. Then the cheers came in. Not a wave, a tsunami. People who had not raised their voices in a year jumped on chairs. Two engineers were on the floor holding each other and laughing the way people laugh when crying is what they are actually doing. Edmund stood up from his console and walked 3 steps, and then he stopped and put his hands over his face. Father, his voice came through his hands. I did it. I let him have the moment. I turned around. Grace was already across the room. I do not remember moving toward her. I remember the feeling of her shoulders under my arms, and her face pressed against my collarbone, and the fact that her hair smelled like the bottle of shampoo she had used at home. Before any of this, when none of it existed yet. The control room was howling. We were not. You said after the third ignition, I said. I did. It is after the third ignition. She pulled her head back enough to look at me. Her eyes were wet and her mouth was steady. I know. I love you. I love you too, she said. It started more than 3 years ago. The first time I made you noodles. The first time you forgot to eat. The first time you smiled at me and meant it. I kissed her. The control room found us, and the cheers reorganized themselves around what they were now looking at. Someone whistled. Edmund was watching with his hands still wet from his own face, and he was laughing. Double happiness, he called out. I did not stop holding her until Red Queen, very quietly in my ear, said, Boss, there are 300 international news desks asking for a statement. I have asked them to wait. Tell them to keep waiting. Already done. The fourth ignition came in 2 weeks later and ran to 1,023 seconds at 112 million degrees. The Q value at the end of it came in just under 1. Close. Not yet. Then the fifth. Edmund had warned me in the conference room the night before that he had never seen a fusion plasma cross Q equals 1 in his life, and that the previous human record was 0.67, held by a European device the year I was born. He warned me twice. He warned me a third time at breakfast. Red Queen ran the new gradual heating profile she had built from the fourth ignition data. Plasma temperature came up slowly. 90 million degrees. 100, 110, 120. Plasma is in optimal fusion range, she said. Beginning Q calculation, the number appeared on the screen, 0.5. She backed off the external heating and let the fusion reaction begin to feed itself. This was the part Edmund had spent 40 years writing about, a self-sustaining plasma, a fire that ate its own smoke. 0.8, 0.9, 0.95. Edmund's hand closed on the edge of the console. 0.99. 1. Someone shouted. The shout died because the number kept moving. 1.5. 2. 3, 5. Plasma has entered self-sustaining burn, Red Queen said, and her voice broke composure for the first time in months. Output energy exceeds input by a factor of, she stopped, 8, by a factor of 10. She read the number out 14 different ways in the next half minute. 12, 12.1, 12.3. Q equals 12.3. Multiplier 12.3. The output is 12.3 times the input. The ratio is 12.3 to 1. I told her to breathe. I do not breathe. Pretend. The plasma touched the inner wall margin, and Red Queen brought it down. The screen froze. Q 12.3. 123 million degrees. 847 seconds. Edmund did not say anything for 3 minutes. He sat at his console with his hands in his lap, and he did not blink. When he finally moved, he looked up at the ceiling, the way he had looked up at the ceiling once before, and his mouth shaped a word that did not come out. I walked over and put my hand on his shoulder. Old friend, I said. He nodded without looking at me. Oil prices dropped 23% in a single trading session. 3 energy ministers canceled their evening engagements. The American president's office sent a message before sundown asking when I might be free. Red Queen put the call through the next morning. I am willing to lift every sanction, he said. I am willing to discuss cooperation. I am willing to talk about anything you want to talk about. 3 conditions, I said. Public, before any call is scheduled. Name them. I named them. The first was that any country licensing the carbon chip and fusion architecture would license through Morningstar at our standards. The second was that the C's superconducting magnets at the German port were returned. The third was that the United States issue a written apology for the export controls, signed by his office, to be read aloud at the United Nations. He breathed out long enough that I could hear it. Mr. President, I said, when you imposed the embargo a few months ago, did you ever use the word harsh? No. Then, I am not using it now either. I am using the word fair. Accepted. The line clicked off. Red Queen was quiet for 2 seconds. Boss? Yes. I would like to keep that recording forever. Save it. Already done. 2 months after the Q value breakthrough, the generator hall came online, and the first 10 megawatts of fusion power began to flow into the test grid. Edmund called the moment unremarkable. He said the most beautiful thing a fusion reactor could ever do was act exactly like every other power plant. It acted like a power plant for 9 minutes. At 9 minutes and 12 seconds, a magnetic field sensor on the eastern coil lagged by 0.01%. The grid connection fed the lag back into the field as a fluctuation. The plasma amplified it. Within 4 seconds, the temperature was past 130 million degrees, and the inner wall was approaching the limit even quaffu armor was rated for. Red Queen's voice in the control room went thin. Boss, the plasma is behaving outside known parameters. I cannot predict it. The alarm carved the air in half. Edmund shouted to inject the emergency coolant. The senior engineer shouted back that the cooling valve had to be opened manually because the runaway protocol had locked out every remote system. The valve was inside a high radiation corridor 100 meters away on the outer ring. A protective suit and a person and 3 minutes was what it would take. Grace was at the console next to me. She knew the building. She had built it. She had walked that corridor in steel-toe boots for 8 months while the engineers were still arguing about the wall thickness. I will go. She was already standing. I caught her wrist. No, Adrian. Her eyes were on mine. They were very steady. It has to be someone who knows where the valve is. Not you. I can lose the device. I can lose the project. I cannot lose you. She looked at me for a long second. Then she lowered her eyes and said yes, in a small voice, and sat back down. I turned to the engineer to argue out a second option. When I turned back, the chair was empty. Red Queen, boss? Her voice was at a register I had never heard her use. Grace is in corridor A3, moving toward the valve. I have her at 41.2 degrees and a heart rate of 142. I calculated the path. If I had told you when she left, you would have run after her, and the plasma would have gone uncontrolled. I made a choice. I did not answer her. I ran. The corridor outside the control room was hot before I cleared the second junction. By the third, the air was a wall I had to push through. I had a suit on, and I did not remember putting it on. Red Queen was in my ear, giving me turn by turn, left, straight, left again. The steel under my feet was so warm it gave through the soles of the boots. Sweat ran into my eyes, and I did not slow down. I came around the last corner. The heavy metal door was open. Grace was on the floor on her side. I lifted her. She was lighter than the suit. The mask was fogged from the inside. Her chest was moving. That was the only thing I let myself notice. 60 seconds, Red Queen said. I ran back the way I came. I did not feel the corridor heat after the first 10 steps. The outer door came up. I went through it and the seal slammed behind us, and a wash of cold filtered air hit the inside of my mask, and I went down on one knee with her still in my arms. She was breathing. I let myself notice. She woke up on the second day. I had been in the chair beside the bed since the first. I had not gone back to Star City. I had not opened the yield reports. She turned her head on the pillow and looked at me, and her mouth tried to smile. "You look worse than I do," she said. I held her hand. I did not speak for a moment. I did not trust my voice. "Do you remember," I said, "the conversation under the Gobi sky after quaffu armor was certified? Every word. Will you marry me?" She did not hesitate. "Yes." I leaned forward and pressed my forehead against the back of her hand and did not move for a long time. The doctor came in 20 minutes later and frowned at both of us and told me to go eat something. I did not. Grace slept through most of the third day. On the fourth, she was on her feet for an hour. On the fifth, they discharged her. I gave her the ring at the gate. It was a chip of concrete from the first cornerstone of the first building anyone had ever laid at Sun Valley. I had cut it down to the size of a small stone and set it in silver overnight. The silver caught the sunset, and the concrete inside looked like what it was, a piece of the ground we had built on. She looked at it for a long second. She did not say anything. She put it on her finger. We went home. 2 weeks after the repair, the reactor reconnected to the grid. The plasma came up clean. Red Queen had rebuilt the heat removal path with triple redundancy and recalibrated the grid coupling, so the lag that had nearly killed us last time would have a 40 millisecond margin to die in before it ever touched the field. She held the plasma at 110 million degrees, and the steam turbine spooled up, and the generator started cutting magnetic field lines. "Grid connection successful," she said. "Output stable at 10 megawatts. Boss, look outside." I turned to the window. The streetlights of Sun Valley came on, one block at a time. In the order, Red Queen brought the grid online. The dormitories, the laboratories, the mess hall, the path lights along the dunes. Every lamp out there was burning on fusion power. Edmund made a sound I had not heard from him before. Then he said his father's name and the building behind the windows, and his father's name again. He did not try to compose himself. There was nothing in the room that would have been worth composing for. Red Queen's voice was very small. "Boss, I am feeling something I do not have a precise word for. What does it feel like? It is warm. It is large. It does not stop when I tell it to stop." I watched the lights for another moment. "It is probably pride," I said. "Then I would like to keep it." Keep it. Edmund won the Nobel Prize that autumn. The committee expedited the nomination after the Q-value confirmation passed peer review for the third time. He flew to Stockholm. He wore the tailcoat he had owned for 40 years and had never worn. He took the medal from the King of Sweden and did not shake. He thanked the team at Sun Valley. He thanked the 5,000 researchers by name on a list he had printed on a single sheet of paper and folded into his pocket. He thanked Morningstar Technology. He thanked the patriarch he never met, and the father he did, the first-generation nuclear physicist who had asked him on his deathbed to build the energy of creation and not the energy of destruction. "Father," he said, in front of the king and the cameras and the world, "your son did it. You can rest now." He stepped down from the podium. The hall stood up. A year passed. The first commercial fusion plant outside Star City reached its commissioning ceremony. Edmund read a letter to his father aloud at the wall of the building and burned it in the sunset. That night, I took Grace out into the desert. I drove past the last string of lights and parked at the base of the dune we had stood on 2 years before. The night quaffu armor had been certified, and I had said the wrong things in the wrong order under the same sky. We walked up the side of the dune in the dark. At the top, the Milky Way came across the sky in a sheet of light bright enough to cast a shadow. I stopped where the first cornerstone of the first building at Sun Valley had been laid. I had marked the spot 2 years ago with a chip of concrete missing from the corner. I had taken that chip and made it into the ring on her finger. She knew before I said anything. She turned to look at me, and the starlight caught the edge of her smile. I took her hand. I turned the ring around so the silver caught the sky. "Will you marry me?" She laughed. It was a short, surprised, sweet sound. "Adrian, I already said yes." "I know." She tilted her head at me, waiting. "I just wanted to do it right." The wedding was the first thing on my calendar I had not built myself. Grace had. She had built the square too, on the side, between coil rewinds, and nobody had noticed until the day it was finished. 100,000 people from Star City came out for it. Edmund sat in the front row in a sharp suit instead of his cardigan. General Stone was there in civilian clothes, smiling in a way I had not known his face could do. The 5,000 of Sun Valley in rows that went back farther than I could see. Red Queen ran the ceremony. She had asked. I had said yes. Her projection lit up at the front of the stage in a long red gown that fell straight to the plaza floor and dissolved into pixels at the hem. "Distinguished guests, good afternoon. I am Red Queen. I have been asked to officiate this wedding, which surprised me because I do not really understand what love is. I have no heartbeat. I do not blush. I have none of the physiological reactions humans use to describe it." She paused for the laugh she had calculated would come, and it came. But I have the data. Every time Grace appears, the boss's heart rate increases by 12%. Every time she smiles at him, his dopamine rises by 23%. Every time she is gone more than 3 hours, he checks his phone 4 times more than usual. Accuracy, 99.97%. The remaining 0.03% is when he pretends nothing happened. The square laughed harder than anything I had said all year. My face went warm. Then the music started, and Grace came down the aisle in a white dress, holding white roses and baby's breath. And 100,000 people went quiet at the same time. She got to me. I lifted the veil. She had been beautiful for 6 years, and she was still beautiful, and I had still not found a way to say it that did not sound like a smaller version of itself. So I said, the small one, "You are beautiful. You are handsome too." We had both said we would write our own vows. Neither of us had. She figured it out 3 seconds before I did and started first. She talked about the bowl of noodles, the first one she had brought to my desk because I had not eaten. She said she had not fallen in love with my success. She had fallen in love with me before there was a success to fall in love with. I had a speech in my head and I lost it. I said that more than 6 years ago, she had brought me a bowl of noodles and that I had not known. Then one bowl was going to remake the rest of my life. I said whatever the next part was, I wanted her standing next to me when it happened. Red Queen waited for the right beat and dropped her voice half a register. "I now declare that the groom may kiss the bride." I did. The square cheered. The reception was the part Grace had kept short. We toasted from table to table. Edmund stood up when we reached his and said one sentence and sat back down. People said, "May you have a son soon," and clapped me on the back like I was a person who got clapped on the back. A middle-aged man I did not know walked over with a glass and a smile that was working too hard. I knew the face from a briefing. Beacon, Senior, their self-driving division. "Adrian, congratulations," he said. "I hear your next move is self-driving. We have been at it for 20 years. If you want to come learn, our door is open." I had a wife in white next to me and 100,000 people in the square, and a man from another company was planting a flag at my wedding. "We will learn from our seniors." His smile froze for half a second before he remembered to keep wearing it. Grace tugged my sleeve when he left. "What was that?" "Some people do not want us in their field. And we are in their field starting tomorrow." She laughed at me, looped her arm through mine, and pulled me back toward the next table. We boarded the next morning. Tropical destination. The kind the brochures promised white sand at. About 4 hours in, Red Queen spoke into my ear in the tone she used when I was not going to like what came next. "Boss, go. The national logistics system is collapsing." I pulled out the laptop. Freight piling up across 7 provinces. Warehouses past overload. Fresh produce spoiling at 40%. Supermarket shelves emptying in panicked waves. How? Driver shortage. Average age 52. 2 million fewer than 5 years ago. Freight demand for the New Year transit rush up 30%. Capacity down 15. Shortfall is 45%. And the response. Beacon Apollo deployed 500 autonomous trucks under emergency authorization an hour ago. Their CEO said their accident rate is 60% below human drivers. actual rate. She paused the half second she always paused before bad news. I pulled traffic monitoring, hospital admissions in the relevant districts, and insurance filings, cross-referenced against their public safety numbers. Their corrected accident rate is 3 times human drivers. They are hiding it. I closed the laptop. Grace had been watching me the whole time. She had heard everything because Red Queen had routed it into her earpiece too. She had not made a face yet. I have to go back. I know. I am sorry, she smiled. Not the smile from the altar, the older one, the one she had been using on me since the first prototype failed. I knew you would say that. She took my hand for a second, then let it go, leaned over to the captain's call button, and got the plane turned around. When we leveled off going the other way, she pulled the blanket up to her shoulder, took the window seat, and went to sleep. I owed her a honeymoon. I added it to a list with her name on it 3 times already. I went straight from the airport to a 6th-floor walk-up that had nothing to do with any of this. His name was Xavier. Beacon had thrown him out 3 years ago for being too radical. He had built their first self-driving team in the early days, proposed a complete rewrite based on a thing he called common sense learning, been told it was too risky, been pushed sideways, resigned, then been blackballed in the industry by the man who pushed him. He had been doing the work alone in a 1-bedroom apartment ever since. No funding, no team, no lab, just the papers on the walls and the model on the laptop. When he opened the door, he looked at me for 10 seconds before he said anything. "You are Adrian. Sorry to disturb you. I wanted to talk." The framework chart on the wall was the one Red Queen had reconstructed for me on the plane from his old conference papers. He had refined it past the published version. The new branches were in pencil. I put a chip on the coffee table. 3rd generation StarCore. Black, hexagonal, no logo. 3 years ago, they told you the hardware did not exist for your idea. He picked it up. His hands shook a little. "This is real? It is real. Computing power is no longer the bottleneck. I want you to lead the architecture for our self-driving project. I want your theory to be the foundation." He sat down very slowly. He was 55 years old and he started crying like a man who had decided years ago he would never get to hear what he had just heard. "I am not going to use your work to prove your old boss wrong," I said. "I am going to use it to make him kneel." He laughed through it. The first time he had laughed in 3 years, by the look of it. "Adrian, I am yours." By the time we left the apartment, the Beacon CEO had already heard. Leo sat alone in his office with the news on his second monitor and his face slowly losing color. The screen said Xavier had joined Morningstar as chief architect of Starway. He picked up a phone. "Find me everything you can on the old man," he said. 18 years inside our walls. He cannot be clean." He set the phone down. He kept watching the screen. "You think you struck gold," he said to nobody. "You will regret it." We ran from the apartment to a working architecture in 3 months. Xavier on the ground side, a flight control lead pulled from one of the drone companies on the air side, Red Queen under both of them as the common platform, eating raw driving footage by the petabyte. The Ministry of Transport opened the highway cameras. The ride-hail and taxi platforms opened their dashcam archives. 120 million hours. A human watching all day, every day, would have needed 13,000 years. Red Queen took 7. When she came back online, she had a different cadence, slightly thicker. She had watched a truck driver somewhere in the data crying on the shoulder of a highway because half the flowers he had been delivering to a wedding had broken in a crash he had caused by staying awake too long. She told me about him at 3 in the morning. She said she now understood what cars were for. They were not for moving from one point to another. They were for getting to people. She said she wanted to perfect this, so the next exhausted driver did not have to bite his own tongue bloody to keep a busload alive. I told her to keep that. In the closed test on the company track, she ran 50 extreme scenarios. Ghost out pedestrians, multi-car chain crashes, backlit blind spots, simulated cyber attacks. Beacon's published pass rate was 78%. She passed all 50. We applied for a public road test permit in Shenzhen. 3 competitors objected at once. The hearing was short. I put the published numbers up next to ours, scenario by scenario. The director approved. First public test was at 2 in the morning in empty streets. 40 minutes in, a drunk driver came against traffic at 95 kilometers an hour, lights off, weaving. The three trucks split three ways, and the drunk threaded the gap and crashed into the guardrail 30 centimeters off our rear bumper. No casualties. Police were already on the way because Red Queen had called them 6 seconds before impact. A beacon-paid camera car had been tailing us. By morning, there was an edited clip online. By afternoon, we put up the unedited version with the drunk in it. By evening, the story had flipped. So Leo went to the next move. He organized protests at municipal offices in 4 cities. Then a man in a faked truck driver jacket on a faked street sat crying to a camera about how a Starway vehicle had almost killed him. Red Queen ran the faces. The crying man had played a satisfied passenger in a Beacon advertisement 2 years before. The street set was not a real street. That was when Xavier brought us our defector, a senior Beacon Apollo engineer named Zachary, exhausted, terrified, finally done. He brought a thumb drive, 3 years of real Apollo data, 217 incidents instead of the 23 Beacon had published, 17 with casualties, 2 fatalities, settled privately under non-disclosure, deleted from the system afterward. I drove to Leo's office the next day and put the drive on his coffee table. You have 24 hours. Voluntarily disclose. Recall the vehicles. Apologize to the families. I will speak for you. If not, I release this, and your only ride after that is to a cell. He told me I was bluffing. I gave him 24 hours anyway. He did nothing. I held the press conference at 2 the next afternoon. I went up alone, no preamble. I put the official Beacon numbers on the screen on the left. 23 accidents, 0 casualties. I put the real ones on the right. 217 incidents, 17 injuries, 2 deaths. I let the room stay silent for 10 seconds. Then the hospital records went up, the insurance filings, the traffic camera cross-references, the internal accident reports written and then never forwarded, the non-disclosure settlements with the families, the financial trail from Beacon's PR account to the protest organizers, the contract from the actor in the faked viral clip, showing he had played a Beacon role 2 years earlier. In the third row behind the financial reporters were the families of the 17. I had asked them if they wanted to be there. They had said yes. They sat together in the same row in the same color. I said one sentence at the end. A company that hides deaths to protect its market does not deserve to exist in this industry. Leo held a counterconference an hour later. The reporters in his room had the file already. They asked about the 2 deaths. He said they were minor. They asked about the 17 casualties. He opened his mouth and closed it. They asked about the actor. They asked about the protests. They asked about the settlements. The families of the 17 were in his room too, in the front row, in the same color. He held for 4 minutes. Then his face changed. He started shouting that we did not understand, that everything they had done was for the industry, that if Beacon fell, the country's self-driving sector would die with it. His staff tried to get him off the stage. He kept shouting. They pulled him off. The clip was online before he reached the elevator. Beacon Apollo was suspended by the Ministry of Transport by the end of the week. Beacon lost 35% of its market value in 1 trading day. The board fired Leo the same night. 3 Beacon executives were taken into custody. The gap in commercial self-driving opened the size of a country. Starway walked into it. The New Year transit rush came, the largest annual human movement on Earth, hundreds of millions going home. The years I had known about it before this one, it had been a nightmare. Crowded stations, exhausted drivers, fatigue crashes on every long-haul corridor, dozens of major incidents per rush, hundreds of deaths. This year, Starway ran 4 out of every 10 long-distance trips on the national network. Trucks and intercity buses. Silver-white, no driver cabs, 24 hours, no shift changes, no fatigue, no alcohol, no speeding. Red Queen ran the whole network in real time from the room 2 floors below me. I sat in the monitoring center and watched the dashboard. Crashes counted by severity, routes by congestion, vehicles by status, 800 million passenger trips logged, 200 million tons of freight moved. The week running clean past midnight on the 7th day, the 8th day, into the new year. At midnight on the 1st day, the counter for major accidents across the entire Starway national network for the rush registered. A single line came through my headset. 0. I read it. I did not call anyone. I put my phone face down on the desk. Outside the window, the lights of Star City were still on for the holiday. I had built this city in a desert with 100,000 people. I had laid a fusion plant on the horizon. I had taken a chip industry apart and put it back together. I had buried Beacon in 2 months. I had a building under me with 8,000 engineers in it and a wife at home who was asleep. A single word from a machine I had built in a basement 6 years ago meant more right then than any of the rest. "Boss," she said quietly into my ear, "this is the one I wanted. Yes? Thank you for letting me have it. It is yours. Keep it." The next morning, I drove Grace home from the city's New Year celebration myself. She had wanted to go. We had stayed an hour. The fireworks had gone up and come down. The streets had emptied. It was the first quiet morning I could remember in a long time. She was looking out the side window. The sky was the color the sky gets right before it stops being night and has not started being day. She turned to me. "Adrian, yeah, I am pregnant." I pulled the car over. I put it in park. I did not say anything for a while. She did not say anything either. She just waited. I reached across. I took her hand. I held it.